Hey there, Mr. Redder here. Welcome back to another episode of r/Entitled People Stories. Today we have a very special episode for you, a compilation of some of the best entitled people stories we've read over the past year. So sit back, relax, and enjoy a few hours of the most entitled people you've ever heard of. And by the way, Karen assured me that for every thumbs up this video gets, she won't try to get anyone fired for an entire week. So please smash that like button and subscribe and turn on notifications for new stories from Reddit every single day. My brother's ex is demanding child support but refuses to take a paternity test. My brother Drew unfortunately passed a month ago. Since his late teens, he was engaging in all sorts of destructive things and it tore our family apart. We tried rehab, therapy, support groups, and interventions, but nothing was working. A week ago, a girl, Zara, got in touch with my parents online, claiming to be pregnant with Drew's baby. My parents got too overwhelmed to talk to her, so I messaged her from my own account to continue the conversation. I already recognized Zara. She was Drew's ex-girlfriend from high school. Zara said she just found out she was around 10 weeks pregnant and that she was really struggling for money and could become homeless very soon, and asked me or my parents if we could help her out. After doing my research, I told Zara that she needs to do a paternity test first. Even though Drew is gone, the test can be done with our dad's DNA. I said I'd pay for the paternity test. Zara got offended and upset and said she thinks I'm horrible for calling her a liar. She sent me a voice message of her crying, which I thought was a bit out of the blue. I told Zara she can either take the test or not, but we aren't giving her any financial help until she takes the test. Zara left me on red. I told some of my friends about the situation, and they think I could have been more understanding and kind to Zara. You're the jerk. I bet a girl who's pregnant and whose baby's father just passed got emotional when the people who acknowledged she had a relationship with him call her a gold digger. Anyway, you should get the paternity test done, but include your mother and your father so it's more conclusive. And just in case your mom is also a liar and/or a cheater. Your dad's DNA doesn't mean anything if your mom was out getting with other people. Info. Are you requiring a pre-birth paternity test? There are risks with such tests that can jeopardize the pregnancy. I would refuse to have one because of that risk. Paternity tests, or in fact any other unnecessary tests, can wait until after the birth in my mind. So I'd say you're the jerk if you insist she takes this risk. Afterwards, it's all game. Her not wanting to take it doesn't mean she's lying, in my opinion. It's very possible she's still grieving, and this could be a trigger. But you aren't a jerk for asking. Obviously, if she isn't in a grieving state, then it's not the jerk. But if he and her were close and such, then no jerks here for now. You're the jerk. Let's check the facts. There's a young pregnant woman who is asking for help, has reached out to you, and you assume she's lying and are demanding proof? Guess you've never heard of human decency. Caring for those who need some help. You honestly sound like a monster, and you should consider taking some classes on kindness. You're the same type of person who will complain about having to pay my college debt without even considering the fact that my degree I had to get loans for is completely useless. So now I'm still slaving away at Walmart, and you expect me to pay back my loans myself? Laughing out loud, dream on. Now that I don't have to worry about my college debt, I can spend so much more on important things that actually improve my life, like makeup and extensions. A girl's gotta look good. You really suck, and I would never give a dude like you a chance to be with me. Have fun being alone the rest of your life, because us girls don't want guys who have no heart, unless you're really good looking, but I'm sure you're not. Reddit boy, do people like this really exist, like in real life? Unfortunately they do, Karen. Unfortunately they do. My sister is demanding I walk down the aisle at her wedding with a girl who ghosted me 2 years ago. The title is weird. So is this whole situation I, 27 male, find myself in. I do think the backstory is important here. So my sister is getting married in November. We are really close and always have been. So I find this whole situation to be even weirder. I've been asked to be a groomsman on her fiance's side. Me and him are cool, and it was important to my sister that I'm included. I was really looking forward to it until I saw who I was paired with. So 2 years ago, I met this girl named Tara, who's 26, female, on a dating app. We started talking daily, FaceTimed a lot, went on dates, we talked for over 3 months, and I felt like it was actually going somewhere. Well, after one of the dates, she completely ghosted me, sent a follow-up text, but got nothing back. I won't lie, I was really upset. I even talked to my sister about it. Well, lockdown hit and I moved away for a job. Come back to find out my sister and Tara are now friends. Apparently, my sister got a new job. Tara recognized the last name, reached out to her, and they became friends. Such good friends, in fact, that she is now a bridesmaid and hangs out at my parents' house. And my parents know her. I found out they were friends literally 3 weeks ago. She never mentioned it to me. I asked if she knew it was the Tara I got ghosted by, and she said Tara had told her, but wanted to keep their conversations private. Then a random text from Tara, asking what I wanted to do for our entrance dance. I immediately called my sister, who informed me that Tara and I would be paired up, including the entrance dance. I asked why. I know many of her bridesmaids, and she had to pair me with the one who ghosted me? She said she had her reasons, and Tara also asked for me specifically. I never responded to Tara and instead went to talk to my sister in person. Got the same answers, and this time she sounded offended that I asked for a different person. I told her how uncomfortable it made me, and she told me to stop overthinking and just have fun. I said she didn't understand how hurt I was. She said she had an idea, but to just do it as her wedding gift. I told her I'd be stepping down from the wedding party. I'll just go as a guest. She went crazy, saying I couldn't do that, and she wanted me up there. I said, fine then, switch me to someone different. She said she wasn't going to, so I told her I'd be dropping out. My parents are calling me a jerk, but I don't think I am. It's a weird request, and I'm not about it. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. They may be trying to set you guys back up, but why would you want to when not one person is willing to openly clear the air about what happened? Instead, they try to force you two together without explanation and expect you to put aside your own feelings and self-respect to accommodate this, which is unnecessary in the first place. And while you're gone, she gets close to your sister and parents. What a weird scenario, which could be easily explainable until you factor in the subterfuge, gaslighting, secrecy, manipulation, and family pressure. What a weird situation. Like they all know something you don't about something that directly affected you. And rather than help you get clarity, they all run cover for her. OP. It is really bizarre. Like, Tara is very charming. Maybe she's just charmed my sister and parents. I really don't understand what is happening. My sister is typically my biggest supporter. It feels like I'm in the upside down. What's obvious is that she's trying to, probably at Tara's request, set you two up again. A bit more speculative might be that Tara ghosting you the first time was a manipulative, playing hard to get tactic that backfired. Alternatively, and similarly speculative, the ghosting itself wasn't a tactic, but if she's charming, like you say, she may not be used to people not being desperate to get in touch with her and is trying to validate that by proving that she can get you now. In any case though, not the jerk. This is weird and inappropriate. If you want, and since you say you're close with your sister, sit her down and have a proper, serious conversation and give her one last chance to come clean and act sane. More than likely, Tara wasn't just seeing OP at the time, and things took off with another relationship. That eventually fizzled, and now OP is a failsafe. If they keep this up, maybe not going to the wedding altogether is the best thing to do, because they will ambush you at the wedding trying to pair you up with Tara. Not the jerk, but Tara sounds like some real bad news. She already is turning your family against you. Why would you let someone like this into your life willingly? Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or everyone else? Please let us know. If you're seeing someone and you decide you don't want to anymore, just be upfront about it and they will appreciate your honesty. Ghosting someone who thinks you may have a future together is not a nice thing to do. Wow, Karen, sounds like you have some experience in the field of being ghosted. Stop it, Reddit boy. Just stop it. Am I the jerk for hosting a fundraiser for a teen whose parents left her homeless? Her parents are now furious. My youngest daughter is a senior in high school. One of her best friends, Lily, just turned 18 as the school year was starting, and her parents kicked her out of the house that same day. My daughter told me she was sleeping on different friends' couches and talking about dropping out to work a job. So my family took her in so she could finish school. I just can't imagine a parent kicking their kid out like that. So after we did that, my daughter and Lily decided to have a community barbecue/bake sale to fundraise for some money to cover food and housing expenses. It wasn't anything I ever asked for, but the girls wanted to do something to contribute for groceries and bills. The girls made flyers and little promos for social media, and they were pretty straightforward about what was going on. They said, "Community barbecue / fundraiser for Lily," and a note from Lily saying, very cute. And a note from Lily saying, "As you may know, my parents kicked me out of the house and cut off any financial support on my 18th birthday, leaving me homeless with no money or car. The Smiths gave me a home, expecting nothing in return except that I stay in school and graduate. I wanted to do something to give back and pay my own way." Anyway, I shared that on social media, and so did the girls and a lot of their friends at school. The barbecue was a huge success. Almost all of our neighbors came by, and so many kids from my daughter's school, and a lot of our family and family friends. The girls ended up raising several $1,000s, which I ended up putting in an education fund for Lily, where I'm also putting stuff like the cash she gives me from her job for groceries and stuff like that. I'm planning on surprising her with it closer to graduation. Anyway, Lily's parents are irate. They saw that I posted the flyer on the community Facebook page, and most everyone in town saw it. I got a call from her dad screaming into the phone at me for slandering their family online, which I felt was such BS. I told him to either stop this and act like a parent is supposed to, or lose my number. He started yelling on the phone again, so I hung up and blocked his number. Then I got a bunch of calls from another number. It was Lily's mom, getting angry at me about how I don't know what she and her husband have been through, and it was trashy of me to be begging the whole town for money for myself and acting like it was their fault. I was like, "Well, it was your fault." And she got so angry and said that she and her husband had given their daughter everything and she was ungrateful, which I feel is BS because they ain't even giving her a roof over her head. Am I the jerk for letting my daughter and her friend who was kicked out at 18 host a fundraiser that was very blunt that it was to raise money after her family kicked her out? Edit. I want to give a massive thank you for everyone in the comments who gave us advice, whether it's legal advice, resources for getting financial assistance for education, school, community resources, etc. Not the jerk. Frankly, that's just a bad thing for a parent to do. If they didn't want to be slandered, maybe don't kick your kid out the instant they become an adult. Edit. As many people have pointed out, it isn't actually slander against the parents if it's true. I used slander for lack of a better term, so for that, I apologize. Not the jerk. They're just annoyed they've been called out for their bad behavior, and now everyone knows about their crappy parenting. They're ashamed and angry that they've been exposed, but they're putting the blame on you instead of reflecting on their own issues. Not the jerk. Imagine kicking your high schooler out of the house and then getting upset at people trying to help her out. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or those parents? Please let us know. Mom tells her kid she can get anything she wants in this store, then gets mad when she doesn't pick out what she wants her to. One evening while I was working by myself at the store I used to work at, a family comes in. It's a mom and a dad with their 2 daughters, one who looks between 10 and 12, and the other looks like she's around 7. As they're coming in, the parents tell the girls they can pick out one item in the store. They look around, and the youngest one becomes interested in a small keychain makeup palette that's shaped like a flip phone. Kid makeup and not real makeup. Want to clear that up. Her mom goes into the clearance section and finds another makeup palette that's much bigger and has a lot more product than the one the girl wants. Since the bigger one is in the clearance section, they're roughly the same price. The mom tries to talk her into getting the bigger one, but the girl still wants to get the phone one. Yes, getting the clearance one is more practical, but that one isn't cute like the other one, and that's really all that a kid that age cares about. The mom starts getting frustrated, and I get why. If you're spending money on crap quality kid eyeshadow, you at least want to get a lot of the stuff. I can't remember how much the palettes were, but I think it was around $10 to $15, and nobody wants to spend that much on a little bit of makeup with a nice looking case. However, they did tell the kid she could get anything. From what I saw, no rules, no budget, no limits. And the way I see it, if you're going to give a kid that kind of absolute freedom, you need to accept that she's going to get something fun and impractical. The older girl decided she's going to get something at the next store they go to, and the parents seem like they're more than ready to leave. The girl isn't picking anything else or agreeing to get the big makeup palette. She just wants the phone. After a little more trying to convince her, the mom just tells the girl she isn't getting her phone and tells her that if she doesn't get the big makeup palette, she isn't buying her anything. And the mom's getting pretty angry with her. She asks her one more time if she wants the clearance one, and when the girl says no, she says, "Okay, we're leaving." The girl gets really upset. Just before the family leaves, the mom says, "I'm not buying something for you that you're going to lose." The worst part of working in a kid-centric store, which I was at the time, is listening to parents scold or argue with their kids. It's always awkward, and you have to pretend you can't hear or see it. Also, if she was worried about the kid losing it, we do have bags. She could also just put it in her purse. There are ways to avoid that, just saying. I understand not wanting to buy useless things for your kid, especially if it's something breakable, like basically everything we sold in that store. But I just don't think it's fair to tell a kid you'll get them anything they want, then get mad at them for not wanting what you want them to, then refuse to buy them anything. Am I the jerk for not paying for my stepbrother and sister-in-law's expenses after kicking them out? I, 29 female, was hosting a party for my mom and stepdad's wedding anniversary. I flew out my 3 step-siblings and their partners to all spend the week in my city, and then on the weekend we would have the party. I and my husband live in a pretty small flat, so there wasn't enough room for everyone to stay. So we offered for my stepbrother Mark and his partner Fran to stay on our yacht for the week. No one in our family likes Fran because she can't keep her opinions to herself, and she's always no general etiquette. So the week went on with Fran making out-of-pocket comments about our city and lifestyle, which was expected but still annoying. One night, me and my husband were attending a party, and I didn't really fancy inviting Fran and Mark, but we did, and obviously everything was fine. We didn't see them for most of the evening. We invited a few people back to our yacht for an after-party, and of course, Mark and Fran were there. Fran was quite intoxicated and started again making inappropriate comments that were making people feel a bit awkward. One of our friends was telling a story about how he did something funny that incurred a fine. Fran got upset and said how the fine he had paid was more than most people make in a year, and he should be ashamed to be happy to throw that much money around. She said she was sad to see the amount of money being spent in our city and how ungrateful and wasteful we all are. Cue awkward silence. I jokingly said that next time Fran should take herself camping because I didn't spend the money to fly her out here, treat her to dinners and parties and yachts for her to be sad, and everyone laughed and moved on. Eventually, everyone left and we went to bed. The next morning, I told Mark and Fran that I was humiliated and horrified by her behavior, and I wouldn't have people being disrespectful to me while staying on my property. Of course, they were still welcome to come to the party, and the flights home were taken care of, but they couldn't stay on the yacht until the party. I probably would have relented if there had been genuine remorse from them, but Fran doubled down on her attitude, and I had had it. After a brief argument, they left and went to stay in a hotel. The party went off without a hitch. We were all keeping the peace for parents' sake. A few days after they had gone home, they sent me a bill for their hotel stay, saying that since I'd kicked them off the yacht, I should pay for their expenses. I sent them a response telling them where they could put their bill. This made the rounds, and my parents are now asking that I pay the bill, as it was a lot of money for them and not for me. And they came on holiday with the expectation that they wouldn't have to budget for accommodation. I said they wouldn't have had to if they'd had an ounce of decency, and that I won't be paying, but my parents are begging me to, so that it doesn't impact Mark and Fran financially. Am I the jerk? Edit. Since this is a point of contention, yes, we did ask Mark and Fran if they were okay with the after party. Mark in particular was a fan of someone coming to the after party, so was very enthusiastic about it, and Fran said yes also. Had they wanted to go to bed, we'd have gone elsewhere. Not the jerk. Actions have consequences. If Mark and Fran had financial concerns, Fran should have kept her mouth shut. They put themselves in a position to incur extra costs, and it doesn't make sense for you to pay for costs they incurred. Am I the jerk for throwing out my stepsister after her foster kid's behavior? I, 30 female, invited my dad to visit me and my husband for a week as we live abroad. He brought his wife, who asked if her daughter Linda could come as well. I don't know Linda very well, as our parents got together when we were already adults, but she's always seemed fine, as does her husband James, so I said okay. Linda notified us that she would be bringing her foster kid. Let's call her Sophie, who's 12. I didn't think this would be a problem, but I was wrong. Sophie was incredibly hyper from the minute she stepped in the house. She would interrupt conversations and demand attention. Linda did nothing about her behavior. The first few days were long and arduous, with Sophie complaining about every activity and meal without fail and dictating the running order of everything because if she didn't get her own way, she would have tantrums like a toddler. She also damaged some art supplies I let her borrow to paint with and damaged the desk in my husband's study. We were all fed up, but felt sorry enough for Linda and James having to put up with it all the time that we didn't say anything. She also developed what I consider a weird fixation with my husband. She would demand to sit next to him at restaurants or at home, ask to hold his hand when crossing roads, and just generally latched onto him. The final straw was when we were all eating dinner at my apartment before me, my husband, James, and Linda were going out for the evening, and the parents would watch Sophie. Sophie was whining that she wasn't allowed to come with us. Sophie finished her food and left the table, and 2 minutes later, we hear something smash. We all run to the lounge to see a very expensive ornament has smashed on the floor, and Sophie is standing there looking smug. She said it was an accident, but none of us believed her. Linda offered to pay for the damage until she found out the cost and had the decency to be mortified and apologetic, but I had had it. I told her to pack up the kid and go. She might be committed to this, but I didn't commit to property damage and having my life run by a kid. Linda and James pleaded that Sophie was just feeling upset and insecure, but I had had enough of cutting slack to everyone involved. Eventually, they left to stay in a hotel. My dad's wife was beside herself and said I should have had more compassion for what Sophie is going through, meeting new people and traveling for the first time, etc. And maybe some of her attitude can be explained by that. It's not the majority. While my dad is on my side about not wanting her around, he said it was too much to throw them out immediately. But I don't see why I should have to put up with destruction in my own home and foot the bill for the privilege. What was the kid going to destroy next? Am I missing something here? Am I the jerk? Not the jerk, but neither is Sophie, yet. I don't know what kind of past she's had, but ultimately, the fault here lies in her enablers, your stepmom and sister. This kid needs to be in therapy, and she needs boundaries and consequences. She cannot be allowed to act like this. 12 is old enough to understand and be better. Given the complete lack of control, you were totally justified in asking them to leave. Am I the jerk for turning away a friend after he showed up to my birthday dinner without RSVPing? I had a birthday dinner this weekend. A week before the dinner, I sent a mass text out to 8 of my friends telling them the location, date, and time, and to let me know by a certain date if they're coming so I can make a reservation at a hibachi place. Most people said they could come. One friend said they couldn't make it, and another friend never responded. A couple days later, I was talking to one of the friends I invited about the dinner, and they said they thought the friend who didn't answer was coming, but they weren't sure. I said that he needs to RSVP so I have the correct head count for the reservation. I never heard from the friend who didn't respond, so I made the reservation accordingly. I should add that before I made the reservation, I texted in the mass text chain with "Last chance to RSVP. I'm making the reservation at this time today." The day of my dinner, the friend who didn't respond showed up right as the hostess was asking for the name of the reservation. I told her that we had an extra person show up and I apologized. She looked to see if she could place all of us, but was unable to find a place to accommodate an extra person without us having to wait 2 hours. So I told the friend who didn't RSVP that they could not join us for the dinner. He got mad and told me I was a bad friend. He told me it was embarrassing to be turned away from a birthday party and that he wasted time and gas coming out. I told him he should have RSVP'd. He told me he told our friend that he might be going. I said that wasn't good enough and he should have told me himself. He told me that I should have asked him if he was coming. Am I the jerk? Edit. For those stating I should have assumed he was coming because another friend said he might be, I don't work off of hearsay. Especially since the friend who said this is known for saying lots of things that don't turn out to be true or turn out to not happen. I never take what they say seriously. Not the jerk. You asked people to RSVP. He didn't. You didn't include him in the reservation. End of story. Telling another friend he might be coming is not an adequate RSVP, or actually not an RSVP at all. The time my employees got mad at me for firing a rude waitress. This happened a couple years ago, but I randomly was thinking about it and thought you guys might get a kick out of the ridiculousness. I had this employee who was a woman in her late 30s or early 40s and was your stereotypical mom bee. I'm a good deal younger than her, and at the time, I was like 26 or 27. Right away, it became clear that she had an issue answering to a woman much younger than her. She talked back a lot and made it clear she felt like she knew more than me and shouldn't have to listen to me when she disagreed. She would frequently bring up the fact I had no kids and she had 4 to disregard my management abilities as if it was in any way relevant. Here's just a couple anecdotes of what I regularly dealt with from her. We had a problem with employees being on their phones excessively, her being one of the worst offenders. I did an employee meeting where I reminded everyone they weren't allowed to be on their phones at all, and we would be a lot more strict about that moving forward. She interrupted my speech to say, "Well, the problem is your generation can't handle being off their phones for more than 2 minutes." I pointed out that she was on her phone all the time too, and her reply was, "It's different. When I'm on my phone, I'm looking at things for my kids, not trying to hook up on Tinder or play Candy Crush." I told her the reason people were on their phones didn't matter unless it was an actual emergency, and she rolled her eyes. She tried to argue with me about the fact I would only schedule her during the day and not nights. Nights are more lucrative because customers buy more alcohol drinks, thus higher tips. I reminded her that when she took the job, she was signing up specifically for day shifts, and most of my waitresses are college students and have class during the day, so there's not any flexibility with their scheduling requirements. She proceeded to yell at me that her desires should trump theirs because she's a mom and she needs more money than them, and slammed my office door shut behind her when I wouldn't cave. The final straw was that I heard from one of the waitresses, who I'm very close to, about how she would talk about how she didn't respect me as a manager and often brought up my lack of desire for kids. She would also apparently say things like, "I'm not going to take orders from someone who hasn't even matured past the 'I don't want kids' phase." Between the constant blatant disrespect and the fact she was barely a passable waitress anyway, I decided to fire her. 2 waitresses confronted me, telling me it was wrong of me to fire her and begged me to give her job back. They had no defense for her crappiness, only, "She has 4 kids." If she has 4 kids dependent on her, it's on her that she repeatedly treated her boss like total crap. It's not like I fired her over one incident. There were countless instances of horrid behavior and blatant disregard for authority that she openly and shamelessly stated was rooted in ageism and my maternal status. So yeah, it's a shame that her kids had to suffer for their mom's behavior, but that's her responsibility, and I have no regrets for throwing out the trash. Because I didn't want to eat glass-flavored sushi? This is a slightly older story, and while I remember a few pretty specific lines that my friend and I still joke about, most of this is generally paraphrased. Back when I was graduating high school, my mom informed me that my graduation gift was going to be a trip to Disney and that my best friend, Bella, could come too. So keep in mind, Bella was 18 and I turned 18 the next month. We spent most of our time in the Epcot showcase, usually Japan. We had the pass to skip around from park to park and opted to eat in Epcot, Japan nearly every day. Since we had the meal plan package, we had been given a few snack options to use through the week. Honestly, the food we would eat during the meals was so much food that we never really used any of the snack during the majority of the week. So we hatched a plan the last week to use the remainder of our snack options on sushi and pastries from Epcot, France after we got lunch at our usual spot. We popped into the small eatery in Epcot, Japan and picked a table near the front. We had started to eat when entitled Dad, okay-ish wife, and their 2 kids came in and flocked to the table next to us. The kids don't play a huge part since one was pretty much a toddler in a stroller and the other couldn't have been older than like maybe 5. They sit down and grab a high chair for the toddler. Entitled Dad then tried to wrestle with this massive mech of a stroller. I think he was trying to fold it down smaller and was getting stressed, so he's fiddling and yanking at random sections of it. Well, his annoyance clearly takes over and jerks what I think was the handle of the stroller back. He doesn't quite manage this well and ends up launching his hand back from the momentum. This was enough to punch a hole straight through the paper lantern light above the table. Now, this may not have been a massive problem had there not been a very clear sound of glass shattering. The poor lantern was hanging loop-sided from a thread. The family collectively stared at the lantern for a few moments before they quickly packed up their kids and moved to a table on the other side of the small eatery. Bella and I sat there in disbelief, staring at the light fixture that looked like it would fall over any second. We thought over telling someone, thinking maybe the family would do it, but once they hunkered down to eat, we lost all faith in that. The tables were close enough at this time that if it fell, it would either come down directly on us, or if we were lucky, fall to the other side of the table. Either way, it would be a glass mess that someone would have to clean up. A lady working there walked by us, and we briefly stopped her, quietly pointed to the lantern, and saying we saw someone accidentally break it. I specifically did not point the family out. She looked stunned, thanked us, shuffled away, set one of those wet floor signs at the table to have people avoid sitting there, and we saw her start a conversation with someone on the other side of the food service counter. We felt good about that, went back to eating, and everything was great. Only, no, not really. The story wouldn't be here if that's how it went. I see Bella make a confused face while looking at something behind me, so I look behind me, only to be looking up at Entitled Dad from my seat. Entitled Dad.
Why in the world did you think that was your business?
Bella and I just stared at him, confused for a minute. Neither of us was really sure what to say to a complete stranger. This is when he decided to pronounce it out, word by word, like we were stupid.
Why in the world do you think that was your business?
Me. I heard you the first time. It's not like I mentioned you're the one who did it. I thought that maybe this is what he was concerned about, since maybe he thought he may need to pay for it or something. Entitled Dad.
That's not what I asked you. Why in the world do you think that was your business?
Nee, looking around confused. I didn't want it to fall on someone?
Still not what I asked. How was this your business?
I was a bit confused how that didn't answer his question, and we just had a few seconds of staring competition before it just dawned on me that he was just crazy. Nee. Because I don't want to eat glass-flavored sushi?
You should have just ignored it. It wasn't your problem.
At this point, I was over being yelled at by some dude I didn't know, with a weird need to act like he's my dad. Nee. I know you think you can say whatever you want to us, because you're 1,000 years old, and you think everyone is younger than you. But man, you broke it and ran away. The only person you should be mad at is yourself, because you can't use your adult words to talk to a server about something that you broke, and instead, you need to yell at someone less than half your age to feel like you control the situation. Super paraphrased here, but I did hit on these points to some degree. I just don't remember the exact words. I could tell he was winding up to yell back when OK Wife stepped in, calling him back to the table. He turned around to argue with her, and at this point, we just decided to yeet out. No management or police, but yikes, that was a weird moment. All good though. We ate so much sushi and pastries that night, we couldn't manage dinner later. New neighbor is demanding I buy her groceries for her family. We just had a woman who's in her mid-20s and her daughter who's 9 move into the apartment across the hall from us. The day that they moved in, she got on Nextdoor, Facebook Marketplace, and really any other neighborhood buy, sell, giveaway group asking for furniture, baby supplies, she's pregnant, and clothes and toys for her daughter. Her daughter went to the same summer camp as my kids, who are 9 and 11, and after she started there, they conveniently had a food drive for the disadvantaged campers. My kids have been going there since they were 3, and they've never had a food drive before. Then when school started, she got on the parents' groups and asked if anyone would be able to drive her daughter home from school and watch her for an hour until she gets home. No pay was mentioned. My husband pressured me to say yes because she's friends with our girls and she's in the same class as our younger daughter, so they can do their homework together. That hour turned into 2, and she started having dinner with us almost every night. Then the girl told my husband she doesn't think her mom is eating when she has dinner with us. That day, we had a lasagna big enough to feed all of us twice, and he sent the leftovers home with her. Then he started to send all of our leftovers home with her, along with clothes our daughter grew out of, toys they don't want anymore, and he started to buy extra groceries just for them. He didn't get anything expensive, just things like eggs, milk, store-brand cereal, fruits and vegetables, and sometimes meat. It started adding up to an extra $40 to $50 a week just for them. He also started helping them around the house. I eventually told him to stop sending the leftovers home with them because I take them for lunch and sometimes the kids also take them. So not having the leftovers is costing us extra money. Plus, the $40 to $50 a week should be spent on our family, not the woman across the hall. He said we can afford it and they need it much more than we do. And I said we already do more than enough for them, acting as a free daycare for her and giving her daughter dinner 5 days a week. He called me selfish, jealous, and cruel. So now I want to know if I'm the jerk. Not the jerk. And I would tell him this. When he is the one providing the free daycare, buying, as in going to the store and actually getting the extra groceries, cooking the extra food, and having to prepare the extra lunches because of no leftovers, then and only then can he call anyone else selfish. It's all fine and good for him to feel good about himself for what you are providing? Nah, he gets no credit for that morally or otherwise. OP. He does the grocery shopping and we take turns on lunches, but he doesn't think it's a big deal. He says microwaving some chicken nuggets and sticking them in a thermos isn't any different than microwaving some leftovers and putting them in the thermos. But there is a difference because now we go through chicken nuggets, bread, lunch, and meat much faster. You mentioned that he's also doing some sort of handyman things over at her place. He's defensive about providing for her. Just be wary that all his intentions are purely charitable. I gotta chime in. Something similar happened to my coworker. Her husband was friends with the neighbor's husband. Neighbor's husband passed in an accident, and husband started helping out the widow with handyman projects, lawn care, etc. 18 months later, husband comes home, says that he's in love with the widow and she's pregnant with his baby. If she's a single mother, she should be able to get food assistance and maybe even some type of assistance check. My sister is 52. My nephew is 20. They both work and get SNAP benefits. No disabilities or health problems. Not the jerk. I'm with you. You guys are already watching your kid for free and feeding her, which is super generous. The extra groceries aren't extravagant, but your kid also needs a college fund that money could be going into. How has this woman thanked you for this free service you're offering her? Has she helped out around your place or expressed extreme gratitude towards you? Has she watched your kid in return when she's available? The pressure from your husband to put food on their table seems strange. Is this in character for him? Does he often take in strays? Or is this out of character? The accusation that you're jealous seems particularly strange coming from your husband. I'd be curious if your husband is attracted to this neighbor or if there's something going on there. Who's the father of the woman's current bun in the oven? OP. She has thanked my husband. She doesn't talk to me anymore because her kid told her I don't like them, even though I never said anything about not liking them. And she baked cookies for us once and made some toys for our daughter once or twice, but that's about it. Wait, so this woman doesn't even talk to you? You watch her kid for free and she refuses to speak to you? Why does your husband think you're jealous of her? Any chance your husband is hooking up with her? OP. All communication with her is through my husband. I don't know. He calls me jealous every time I complain about him buying her groceries or helping around the apartment. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her husband? Please let us know. It sounds like he's definitely using some equipment over there. Am I the jerk for publicly humiliating my mom? I'm 24, female, and I have a half-brother, Ethan, who's 17. When I was 16, our mother married her new husband and has 2 kids with him. Ethan's father isn't in his life, so he stays with them full-time, but I spend more time with my dad and his family because I just get along with them better. I love my mom, but she can be a bit much sometimes, so I rarely see her. Ethan and I text occasionally. It was my mother's birthday a few days ago, and I was visiting, and I noticed that Ethan and my newborn half-sibling weren't around. I asked my mom where they were at, and she said that she asked Ethan to check up on the baby while she took a break. We were all in the backyard, by the way, which is massive. But yeah, okay, no biggie. But some time later, I still couldn't find him, and so I went to Ethan's room, and he's rocking the baby while she's inconsolable, and he's crying too because she won't stop crying. There were diapers and baby formula everywhere, and he was saying that he tried everything, but she just won't stop. I managed to calm them both down somehow and asked Ethan why he didn't just call someone for help. He said that he's usually really good at this, and his mom makes him take care of the baby all the time, so he just panicked. He then told me that he helped out with our other half-sister when she was a baby as well, and still takes care of her too. I was really upset. I mean, yes, there's nothing wrong with needing to take a break, but Ethan's a 17-year-old. He's not the father or a mother, but apparently he takes care of our half-siblings more than our mom and stepdad? I walked up to my mom while she was talking to a group of people, and I basically told her that I can't believe she's dumping all her responsibilities onto Ethan. She knew what I was talking about immediately and told me to relax and that Ethan likes it, blah blah blah. I told her that while she was out here having a blast, her son was crying in his room because of how overwhelmed he was. She got really red and everyone went silent, which was awkward, but yeah. I later got a call from my mom saying that she respects my opinions on the situation, but that I didn't need to publicly humiliate her in front of her friends and coworkers. Apparently, her boss was there too, and he's being very cold to her. I don't know. I just can't get Ethan out of my head. Am I the jerk? You didn't humiliate her in front of people. Her own behavior humiliated her in front of people, and now she's transferring the blame to you. If she had done nothing wrong, why would she be embarrassed by what you said? Not the jerk. Not the jerk. Hate to say it, but public humiliation is a good driver for change. Mom is not God. The earth is full of bad people, and a good amount of them are moms. I would, however, suggest that you follow up with him to make sure she didn't retaliate against him. Not the jerk. Good on you for defending your half-brother. Being forced into a parental role, even if he, in part, likes it, isn't okay. He's at a point where he feels like he can't ask for help from the baby's actual parents. That is a huge problem. Calling her out in public may not have been the most kind thing to do, but it forces your mom to actually address the problem because now other people know about it. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her mom? Please let us know.
You think that's bad? I would have walked right up to her, let one rip, and started barking like a chihuahua.
Why does that not surprise me? Can't do anything without a medical reason. A few years ago, I worked under a terrible boss, whom I shall call Tiff. Unfortunately, I'm not exaggerating when I say terrible. She had HIPAA violations on record, writing people up for stuff that she told them to do, writing them up for things that happened when they weren't there, changing people's schedules with no notice, and then getting them in trouble when they didn't show up for the changed schedule, trying to write people up for using FMLA, the general yelling and petty bullying bad managers do, the works. Senior management knew about all of this, and they aided and abetted her. Anyways, after being hauled into a meeting with her and a senior manager where she lied about me and did her best to paint me as a lazy and generally terrible worker, I'd had enough. I went to the other senior manager, who shall be called Spineless for reasons you can probably guess, and told him that I couldn't deal with this anymore and I had to be transferred to another department in the store. I had experience in a few other areas which were in high demand, so it wouldn't be hard to find a place for me. It would just be hard to fill my spot in the bakery, especially given that it was late in the year and we were always incredibly busy over the holidays. Spineless said no. Well, actually, he said that he'd see what he could do, but it wasn't likely to happen because I was too important to the bakery to lose. I pointed out that it was so stressful that it was affecting my health and I really couldn't continue. If I had to, I was going to be calling out. He still said no.
We can't do anything unless you have a medical reason.
Now see, I knew what he actually meant was that there was no way they were actually doing anything, so I should just shut up about it already. Unfortunately for him, I don't like subtexts like that, and I didn't feel like dealing with the mistreatment anymore. So I sat there for a moment, debating, and decided to give him what he said he needed. See, I have a few medical issues that are annoying, but unless they actually keep me from doing my work, I think it's kind of a cop-out to bring them up. But under the circumstances, management was being completely unreasonable, so cop-outs it was. So I explained that I had an official diagnosis of anxiety, and due to reasons above, I couldn't work under her. Spineless kind of stopped and looked at me, then said,
Okay. We'll see what we can do, but we'll need you to at least get through the holidays.
I told him I would do my best, but I couldn't handle the constant threats of write-ups, so he would have to keep her from enacting any disciplinary measures against me. He said, sure. I also added that I really didn't want anyone else to know about my anxiety, as I don't like my personal life being spread about. About a month later, something else happens where a bunch of cakes were ruined and I was the last one who touched it. They were someone else's responsibility as soon as I was done with them. The other person just hadn't done their part, and Tiff was trying to get me in trouble however she could. Tiff hands me a write-up to sign. I'm furious, but I carefully write down in the comments section that I have a medical condition interfering with my work, which I had already notified senior management of. Then I insist on having her give me a photocopy of it, which they're supposed to do but often don't. I heard from the supervisor, who was also present, that when she saw what I had written, Tiff had an appropriately shocked Pikachu face and asked if supervisor had known anything about my mysterious medical issue. For once, Spineless had followed directions and not shared my private information with the world. I probably should have just escalated to corporate at this point, but I ended up not. Just wrote a nicely worded letter about how I had requested ADA accommodations because anxiety technically can count as a disability. I had already looked it up. And they had done nothing about it. Stuck copies of the letter along with a write-up and a note from my doctor in Spineless mailbox and in the store manager's mailbox. I should probably point out that by this point, about 4 other people had left the bakery due to medical conditions which were directly related to Tiff. They were legit medical reasons, but either exacerbated by her or used as an excuse to get away from her. So I certainly wasn't the first person to do this. Lo and behold, when you stuff enough legal terms along with relevant meeting recaps and dates into a letter, people do something about it. I had meetings with both the store manager, who insisted he had heard nothing about this, and spineless, and they offered to get me out immediately, but asked if there was any possible way for me to stay through Christmas, which was about 2 weeks away. I didn't really want to be working a different area when everyone else was already crazy busy with no time to catch me up, so I agreed under the condition that they changed my schedule so that I was not scheduled with Tiff at any point in time. And what do you know? They got me out right after Christmas. So yeah, ask and you shall receive, jerks. Hilarious enough, come February, Tiff went on vacation and the bakery supervisor asked me if there was any way I could come back to help cover, which of course I could do. Figured I might as well stick it in their face that the manager was the problem, not the department. Sadly, they didn't do anything about her until she transferred to a different store where she is no doubt still wreaking havoc. But I escaped with my sanity mostly intact, so it was a win for me. Edit. I was told by someone I should expect to know that it's a HIPAA violation when managers gossip and spread information about a medical issue only revealed to them due to an ADA request and or discovered through the employee healthcare plan. I certainly could be wrong, but I know that it was a big enough issue that management from top down got a reprimand from corporate.
Wouldn't it be nice if employees could team up and vote their boss out of their position?
Am I the jerk for calling my niece a spoiled brat and making her cry? I'm 22, female. My sister, who's 28, recently had to move in with me because she's getting a divorce and has nowhere else to stay. She has a daughter who's 7. I live in a 2-bedroom apartment, so it's cramped and tensions are high. My niece is terrible, to be honest. She screams all day long at the top of her lungs. I work from home, so I've tried to get my sister to get her to stop, but she's so depressed from her divorce that she struggles to get out of bed. I've asked my niece to quiet down myself, but she just smirks at me and continues playing and screeching. I've gotten reprimanded at work for it. She also recently broke my laptop. I made it clear to both of them that my niece is not allowed to use my electronics minus the living room TV. Lo and behold, niece got her hands on my laptop to play games on it, spilled milk all over it, and ruined it. I was furious, but my sister paid to replace it, so I let it go. I've tried many times to talk to my sister about this being unacceptable, but I keep getting blown off and told to let her grieve in peace. I do feel bad for her, so I was doing my best to just put up with it. Today I came home from errands to find my niece playing on my Nintendo Switch. Mind you, this was kept in my room, so she must have gone in there and looked for it. Annoyed, I held my hand out and told her to give it over. She ignored me. I called for my sister to take care of her daughter, but she was asleep and told me to leave her alone. So I just grabbed the Switch right from my niece's hands and took it back to my room. She started screaming and crying and literally rolling on the floor, but I ignored her. Well, she decided that was just not acceptable, so she took a Sharpie and drew all over the living room wall. When I saw it, I freaked out. I told her she's a spoiled little brat. She started screaming and crying even worse, which finally woke my sister up. She came out, and instead of being angry and scolding her for her behavior, she scolded me for yelling at her and calling her a spoiled brat. Not my proudest moment, but I yelled at my sister that I was being kind by letting them stay with me rent-free. I was being treated like absolute dirt in return. She wasn't parenting her kid, and I wasn't going to parent her kid for her, so she needed to get her act together and get her daughter under control, or they could find somewhere else to stay. Her daughter was not only getting me in trouble at my job, but she had no respect for my personal belongings, and now I was probably going to lose my security deposit because she doesn't accept the word no. My sister started crying, calling me a jerk, and she and my niece haven't come out of their room. I feel bad now. Am I the jerk? Edit, clarification. Prior to this incident, I have not raised my voice at my niece a single time. I've tried to have talks with her about respecting my home and my things, but she couldn't care less. She also laughed when I cried over my broken laptop. Even then, I did not say a single word to her. I talked to my sister. I have tried to have conversations with my sister about my niece's behavior, only to be guilted and told she was going through a hard time. Niece has always been like this even before the divorce, so I'm sure such a devastating life event has made things even worse for her. I'm going to set a date for them to leave once things calm down a bit. I will also talk to my sister about therapy for the both of them. Not the jerk. Pack up their things and tell them to find another place, then get out. Tell the princess that she's not the first to go through a divorce and won't be the last. Not the jerk. Let them sulk in the one room. Solves a lot of your problems. Her grief over her divorce doesn't absolve her from being a parent. She needs to get her act together. Not the jerk. Don't wait too long to make her leave. Right now you're risking your job and apartment. I'm sure your neighbors aren't too happy about the screaming. Now the niece is damaging your property and apartment, costing you money. Your sister needs a wake-up call to get her and her daughter help, but you can't be expected to destroy your own life because of her divorce. Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk for how they handled this or not? Please let us know.
Yowza! With a brat like that, no wonder hubby bounced.
Oh, that's cold. Am I the jerk for refusing to give my former brother-in-law's stepkids access to my late sister's possessions? My sister Anna passed 8 years ago. She had 2 boys, Luca and Milo, with her husband. The boys were her whole world, and when she realized she wasn't going to make it, she took me aside and told me she wanted me to look after her possessions, which included her small jewelry collection, a couple of very fancy art supplies, think custom paintbrushes kind of thing, some stuffed animals she'd had since childhood, and some family photos and baby books and blankets saved that belonged to our family. She told me she knew her husband would move on, and she worried he would allow any future kids of his to have her stuff, instead of her boys once they became of age. She made me promise I would keep them for the boys once they moved out. I made her the promise and I kept it. He knew about it and was extremely unhappy with Anna's decision. He felt betrayed and like they should be just as much his as hers, but legally he couldn't do anything. My former brother-in-law remarried 6 years ago and has 2 stepdaughters as well as a biological daughter. Luca and Milo come to my house 1 weekend a month, which was ordered by the courts. And while they are with me, they have admitted to feeling like their dad wants them to treat the 3 girls like their mom's kids. He had asked them to ask me to give the girls the jewelry and stuffed animals. The boys also told me he had shown the girls the photos of the 2 of them with the stuffed animals, and the girls got really jealous. They said they don't want their mom's stuff to go to them. I promised them it would not, and I would give it to them one day. Former brother-in-law's oldest stepdaughter is turning 13 soon, and apparently she wanted my sister's locket or a look-alike. He approached me about it, and I told him no way. He told me I was being selfish, and they are Milo and Luca's sisters, and Anna's memory should be shared with them, and they should feel like they have a guardian angel looking out for them. I told him Anna had not wanted that, and her priority would have always been her kids over kids that he had or took on with someone else. I told him those 3 girls had nothing to do with Anna and were not entitled to any of her possessions. He called me a jerk and told me I was making the girls feel bad, and that even if Anna never met them, I should have accepted them as family and done my best to treat them. He also brought up my not even letting them see the things in person, the stuffed animals especially, and I do remember his younger stepdaughter, who is 10, was upset to not get to see them. It makes me wonder if I'm being too harsh with the kids, but I also don't want them to get attached either because they will never actually get anything from me, and the boys don't consider them sisters, so it's unlikely they will ever give them anything either. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk, and wow. How did your sister predict your brother-in-law's future behavior so well? OP. I'm not sure. I never expected her to worry about that stuff, but when she got sick, she did. She would never tell me where it came from either, but I have to wonder if it's how he responded once they learned that she wasn't going to make it. Only jerk here is brother-in-law. Why would the girls even want this stuff if he weren't showing it off, trying to manipulate the situation to get the things? So weird. Not the jerk. Not the jerk. This is exactly why your sister was so concerned. Stand your ground and call him out that this is precisely why his wife didn't trust him and asked you to look after her stuff, and that you will be sticking to that very promise to her. Am I the jerk for sneaking out of the restaurant after my fiancé told me to pay for his and his friend's meal? I, 33 female, have been engaged to my fiancé, male 37, for 5 months. We don't share finances because that's what he wants. I got a raise on my salary. Now I earn 30% more than he does, and I notice that he's been using this to ask me to pay for him and his friends. Whenever I say no, or why should I pay for this, he'd respond with, "The 30%, that's why," and act as if the 30% is unfair or that I'm not deserving of it. Several times, he has tricked me into paying for his and his friends' meals by asking me publicly. Let me say that I'm too nice to say no. I hate confrontation, especially when we're at a public place like a restaurant, so I just grin and pay. Last Tuesday, he asked me to join him and his buddies for dinner. I told him from the start I wasn't paying for their food and he shouldn't expect me to. He said he got this and no worries. We got to the restaurant, met his friends, ordered food, and in the middle of the meal, he leaned in and whispered that I would be paying for everything he and his friends ordered. I got so mad, I whispered back, "No." But he probably relied on me not causing a scene in public and in front of his friends. He said, "You have enough money. You could pay for everyone's food. 30%, remember?" I was fuming inside. Instead of reacting negatively and losing my temper, I waited till the bills arrived. They were already split from the start when we first ordered. I paid for mine, then I excused myself to the restroom. I then sneaked out from there, got into my car, and went home. I started getting phone calls from my fiancé, then texts asking where I was. I texted back saying I didn't appreciate how he put me in this situation and basically tricking me into paying for his and his friend's food. I told him I went home and then stopped replying. An hour later, he came and started yelling at me, calling me selfish, irrational, cheapskate, childish for sneaking out, stuff like that, and for leaving him stuck with a bill he could not pay. He had to call his brother for help. We had a loud argument, then he walked out. His friends didn't speak to me on this, but he told me that they're disappointed in my behavior and are telling him to take time and reflect on the type of woman he's going to be married to. Am I the jerk for what I did? Is what he's expecting from me fair or justified? ETA, some info. 1. He said that because the restaurant wasn't expensive, then I could have just paid. 2. He admitted not telling me about it till later, knowing I'd refuse. He still thinks my reaction was childish and unacceptable. Why are you marrying someone who insists that his money is his money, but your money is also his money? Not the jerk. OP. Yes, I don't say a word about how and where he spends his salary. He does intend on dictating how I spend my money sometimes. But now with the raise thing, he's admittedly gotten more aggressive. I keep trying to get to the root of the issue, but to no avail. The root of the issue is that he's selfish and controlling and doesn't respect you. Along with a nice dash of insecurity that he's no longer better than you. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her fiancé? Please let us know.
Dude sounds like a real jerk, to be honest. Is there, like, anything good about him?
Entitled Karen thinks my parents' land is hers. So, a little backstory, as it'll be much needed in this story. My parents live in a gated community and got their house custom built. They purchased the land separately, as originally they were selling it all together, and all they needed was 3 acres, not 5, for the house. So they purchased one plot for the house and the other plot next to it and left it empty for privacy, since if they bought it all together, they would have had to pay double the property tax. Now onto the story. It was about 7 p.m. and 25 minutes until sundown, so I was in my room texting when I saw flashlights on the land we have next to the house. So I told my dad and we both went out there, thinking it was the HOA, as they usually check to see if the trees aren't overgrown. So we went out there and see what we'll know as Karen in this story. Her husband, and her son, which looked to be about 14 to 16, with a BB gun and traps. This is where it starts. Dad: hey, can we help you? Karen:
No, we're just hunting. This is a really nice neighborhood.
First off, how did she even get in? Unless she had a code or knew someone who lived here, she couldn't even get in. Dad: sorry, but we own this land and you can't hunt here. Also, no animals come through here except squirrels or some occasional deer. Karen:
No, this is public land. And okay, we will set traps for the deer.
This is where the Kevin, aka the father, comes in. Kevin:
Is there a problem?
Karen:
They say they own this land, but I doubt that.
I went into the house and called the community security. They were obviously trespassing, as even when my dad said it was private-owned land, they set traps. I didn't hear the rest of the conversation, but when the security came, this is what happened. Karen:
This man is bullying my son for hunting.
Security: this is private-owned property. Even if it wasn't, you can't hunt in a community you don't live in. Turns out they were already looking for her, as when they were looking over the community gate footage, they followed behind another car that put in the code. Long story short, they were kicked out of the neighborhood, and if they ever come back without a valid reason, they would get trespassed and the police will be called. The whole time, the son just looked embarrassed and looked like he didn't even want to go hunting. I'll update this when I get the full story on what happened when I went inside. Update: this is what happened when I went inside. Karen's husband:
Even if you do own this land, you obviously don't use it. Come on, we drove an hour to come here, and you seriously can't let us hunt deer?
Dad: no, I'm sorry, but Karen:
Plus, it'll be good for the community. Less deer is less noise in the middle of the night. It can also stop accidents from the deer getting run over.
Dad: that's up to the community if you can hunt deer, and I might use the land in the future. I don't want dead deer on the land. From what my dad said, they didn't have a car big enough to put the deer meat in, so most likely they were going to leave it there. Karen:
Exactly. By us getting the deer, it'll stop them from being on the land when you build it.
and you can just take the deer. It should be easy. Dad, I'm going to call security if you don't leave. How did you get in here? Do you live here? Karen's husband.
It's not up to you. We will wait for security.
My dad was walking to come in and call security, but he didn't know I went inside to call them. They came around a minute later. Getting revenge by pouring a pint of Coke on a customer. Just to set the scene of how much of a jerk this regular customer was. 2 weeks before this story takes place, this particular customer walked into the restaurant on a Wednesday night with about 40 people. The restaurant was only about 120 covers, and we rarely filled more than 70 of them midweek, so only had 2/3 servers on unless we had large bookings, demanding a table for all of them. Being a regular, the host already knew he was a piece of work, but the horror on her face when he revealed that he didn't have a booking still haunts me to this day. The host calls the general manager over, who's delighted at the opportunity to up our sales for the night, and sits them in an area of the restaurant that's kept closed unless we're particularly busy. Unfortunately, I was the server with the most experience that night, so I ended up serving them along with a few other tables, while the other servers picked up the empty tables in my area. Long story short, they were all generally jerks all night, got far too drunk, made far too much noise, mistreated the runners because they couldn't carry out 40 plates of food in one go, etc. I gave them the best darn service I could have given, only to receive a 25-cent tip. And when the general manager questioned him, he responded,
I'm a regular here, and I never tip because I don't believe in it. So count yourself lucky that you're getting anything.
Manager is not happy. Back to the story. Jerk customer returns for his bi-weekly meal with his family, and much to my dismay, ends up sat in my area. I go over to the table and am greeted with,
Oh, for goodness sake, not you again.
The effort it took not to say, I was thinking the same thing, was unreal. I ignored it and carried on. His wife and daughter, being visibly irritated and embarrassed by his behavior, at least made me feel a little bit better. Orders taken, starters are done, main course is out. I go to do a check back and offer another round of drinks. Along with a few other drinks around the table, his son orders a pint of Coke. When I get back to the table with the drinks, being the jerk that he is, Jerk refuses my polite request to move slightly so that I can pass drinks around, and ignores me when I ask if he can pass the drinks over for me, leaving me no option but to lean over the table. Restaurant is pretty cramped. They were in a corner of the room. It's unfortunate, but it happens. I pass the first drink over to his daughter, leaving only the pint of Coke on the tray I'm carefully balancing in my other hand. As I return to standing to get the pint of Coke, I mess up. The pint glass has fallen on my tray in the direction of jerk customer and literally rained down an entire pint of Coke and ice all over the guy. I'm holding back laughter. His wife and daughter are losing their crap laughing. His son only seems concerned that he isn't getting the pint of Coke he wanted. I look up to see neighboring tables, who I can only presume heard him being a jerk, chuckling. And then in the distance across the room, manager's face has contorted into some bizarre display of both amusement and fear. Now comes the expected bad treatment from angry customer. Manager literally runs to my defense. Jerk customer stands up, picks up his wife, and announces that they are leaving and won't be coming back, much to the dismay of his son, who is literally cramming spaghetti into his mouth as fast as he can. Kid was clearly hungry. Can't really blame him. The guy looks like he's been involved in some kind of Coke and Mentos experiment gone wrong. Manager apologizes profusely and doesn't charge them. Every front of house employee in the restaurant thanked me when it became clear in the following weeks that he really wasn't coming back. Surprisingly, the cleanup wasn't that bad. His hair and clothes seemed to have absorbed the majority of the liquid, and it was pretty much just ice on the floor. The neighboring table said as they were leaving, "We'll definitely be coming back, and we hope the entertainment is just as good next time." Manager didn't mention it until I handed in my notice, and all he wanted to say was it was the best thing he's ever witnessed a server do to a customer. Messing up never felt so good. Karen mother tries to marry me off to a stranger. I went out on a Friday for a few hours with some friends. Just some shopping and catching up. I haven't seen some of them for the last 2 years because of lockdown, when we used to hang out almost every week. And I'm leaving the country in a few weeks, so we took this opportunity to use as a catch-up and a farewell party. I was out from late afternoon to about 9 or 10 p.m. When I got home, I took out my keys to unlock the gate, but it wouldn't fit. I tried to turn the key around, yes, like a USB, thinking it might fit the other way, but it still would not fit. I called my mother and she didn't pick up. I called my grandmother, who lives with me, but she was out with her friends as well and wouldn't be home anytime soon. At this point, I was angry. My mother already burnt a couple of my work pants the day before because I refused to wear a dress to work. My line of work requires me to move around a lot, so a dress or an office skirt was not suited for my environment. I shook the gate, but no one was home, so I picked the lock. I opened the metal gate after a few tries. Luckily, the wooden door behind it was not locked. The neighbors did call the cops on me, and of course, I had to show them that I actually lived there and this was my legal address. I took some essentials and went to stay at my friend's house for the night because I couldn't lock the door back, and I didn't feel safe in the house without a locked door. The next day, my grandmother and I were invited to go to a pre-wedding event. It was kind of a meeting the elders and engagement party / ceremony at a cafe. My mother only sent me the address and time for it. It was perfectly normal for my grandmother to be invited to these things via my mother. My grandmother doesn't know how to use a phone other than basic functions like calling. We showed up on time to the cafe and were escorted to a booth-type seat at the corner of the cafe. The booth already had a lady who was in her mid-40s and a guy. I assumed she was the mother and the guy was her son. The moment we sat down, the lady took out a calendar and notepads filled with lists of flower arrangements, color schemes, menus, dresses, hairstyles, etc. She introduced her son, who is 28 by the way, told me what he does for a living, what he studies, and where. She thanked me for agreeing to marry him. I just looked at her, then to her son, then to the wedding planners and notes. Then it finally registered that this was for my wedding. My grandmother was upset to say the least. I apologized to this lady and said there must be some kind of misunderstanding between us because I came here to attend someone else's engagement party, not to plan my own, and added that I was only 20 this year. My grandmother then rudely asked why she thought that I would be marrying her son. The lady replied that my mother had contacted her and said that I was looking for a partner and a husband to settle down with so I could move out. My grandmother calmly said to the lady that she's been lied to and I was not going to be getting married anytime soon. She said her son seems nice and hopes that he finds someone who likes him to marry in the future, but it was not going to be me. We got up and left. When we got home, I found my things stuffed in a black plastic bag outside the door. My grandmother opened the door and told me to bring my stuff inside. The moment I stepped through the door, my mother yelled that she put so much effort into finding a guy who would talk to a girl like me to marry and that I should just be grateful. She didn't just try to marry me off to some older guy, and I should be happy she found someone around my age. She told me I embarrassed her because the mother called her and told her what she did was not okay and to not do it again without even asking or informing me properly. My grandmother started to shout at my mother in Cantonese, which resulted in them being in a heated argument for almost 30 minutes, and my grandmother kicked out my mother, which of course she moaned about and cried about before leaving. But I didn't retire. My friend, I'll call her Sandy, worked at a travel agency in British Columbia, Canada. It was a small owner-operated business with the owner and 3 employees, including my friend. Everyone worked Monday to Friday from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. One of my friend's coworkers, I'll call her Jane, an older woman in her early to mid-60s, was a longtime nuisance employee. Among other sketchy behavior, Jane was always scamming ways to take time off over and above her official paid vacation time. In order to make up for the lost hours, she would claim overtime hours and pay by supposedly going into the office during her off hours to finish up work without even being requested by the owner to do so. Despite being caught in her own lies on a number of occasions and being warned about trying to claim for unsanctioned overtime, the owner of the travel agency was reluctant to officially reprimand Jane or get rid of her. The reason being is the owner discovered after she had hired Jane that Jane had actually been fired from her previous job at another local travel agency for pulling the same stunts. However, Jane had sued her former employer for unfair dismissal and had won a settlement. After a few years of my friend Sandy working at the travel agency, the owner was ready to retire and offered to sell the business to my friend. Sandy took her up on the deal and took over the business while keeping on Jane and the other employee. Once again, just as the previous owner was afraid to get rid of Jane, so was Sandy for fear of being sued. When Sandy took over the business, she instituted guidelines regarding taking time off, and she established an official no overtime policy. Jane would still try with her shenanigans, but was far less successful in getting what she wanted with my friend in charge. However, Jane still had one trick up her sleeve when she wanted to take time off on a whim. Sandy was a divorced single mom of 2 boys who were heavily involved in youth hockey. She would sometimes leave the office an hour or 2 before closing to get her boys to hockey practice or a game. In order to avoid requesting in person and potentially being denied, Jane would wait for Sandy to be out of the office to book a day off if she didn't feel like coming into work or had made plans. Sandy would then arrive at work the next morning only to discover that Jane wasn't coming in. Despite this happening a number of times, Sandy would usually let it slide since there was now a definite no overtime policy. Therefore, Jane could no longer claim to come into work on the weekend or after hours in order to try and make up for the day off. She would either miss out on a day's pay, in turn saving Sandy money as the owner, or it would come out of her remaining paid vacation days. Moreover, 2 people in the office at one time could usually handle everything. Jane not coming in was really a no-loss situation for Sandy. There was one time, however, when Sandy was going to be away for 1 to 2 work days just before the weekend to take her boys to a hockey tournament. She told both Jane and the other employee, both verbally and in writing, that they could not book time off for the dates in question since she would be away and needed both of them in the office. Within a few days of giving this notice, Sandy went into the office on a Saturday to do some paperwork and go through the sales for the week. This is when she discovered that, only the day before, Jane had booked a trip for her daughter and son-in-law to Las Vegas, as well as a plane ticket in her name to Calgary, where her daughter lived. Both the trip to Vegas and the trip to Calgary coincided with the dates Sandy would be out of the office. Sandy then checked the vacation booking schedule to further discover that Jane had indeed booked the days off that she had expressly been told she couldn't have. Not mentioning she had discovered the travel Jane had booked for herself and her daughter, Sandy emailed Jane telling her she would have to deny her days off since she had already been told they were unavailable because she, Sandy, would be away and needed Jane in the office. Through a continued series of email exchanges, Jane replied and outright lied to Sandy with some excuse about her daughter getting some long-awaited medical treatment or surgery, and she needed to go to Calgary to help out for a few days and to look after her granddaughter. Sandy replied to this lie by telling Jane she knew about the trip she had booked to Vegas for her daughter and son-in-law, that Jane's trip to Calgary was most likely to babysit her granddaughter while her daughter was in Vegas, and that she would still have to deny Jane the days off, especially since she booked them after being told they were unavailable. Jane countered in her subsequent reply, without even addressing the fact that she had been caught in a lie, that she had been a dedicated employee of the travel agency for several years and couldn't understand why she was being treated so unfairly after all she had done for the business. She then wrote that since she wasn't being treated as a valued employee, she had no choice but to retire and was giving her 2 weeks' notice. Despite Jane's threat, Sandy replied that she would still be unable to grant her the days off and left it at that without making any mention of Jane's threat to quit and retire. Sandy then contacted her accountant, who also acted as her de facto business advisor, and explained what had happened with Jane. Also aware of Jane's previous shenanigans, Sandy's accountant told her that this was the out she had been looking for with Jane, and she had it all in writing. He told her that Jane had essentially resigned/retired, and all Sandy needed to do was honor Jane's desire to do so, let her finish out her 2 weeks, or pay her 2 weeks' wages in lieu with no further severance pay, legally required since she hadn't been fired. The following Monday, Sandy went into the office early, accompanied by her long-term boyfriend to act as a witness. She put Jane's belongings from her desk into a box and took the things that were property of the business. Since Jane was old school and had resisted inputting client information in the company database, this also included a small box filled with index cards which had client phone numbers, addresses, credit card information, and other personal information noted on them. In the meantime, the other employee had arrived for work and they all waited for Jane to show up. Jane arrived just before 9 o'clock, acting as though nothing had happened, and greeted everyone with a "Good morning" as she walked through the door. However, she was apparently taken slightly aback when she noticed Sandy's boyfriend seated in the far corner of the office. At this point, Jane was midway to her desk when Sandy informed her that there was no need to go any further and that she had accepted Jane's notification of retirement. She then handed Jane a check compensating her for the hours she had worked in the current pay period, as well as 2 weeks' wages in lieu of Jane finishing out her 2 final weeks before her retirement. Jane was dumbfounded and went into panic mode.
But I didn't retire. I'm not ready to retire.
Sandy responded that indeed she had retired, given her notice, and had proof of it in writing. All Jane could do was continue repeating,
But I didn't retire. I'm not ready to retire.
while unsuccessfully attempting to get the support of the other employee who refused to come to her defense. Sandy then pointed to the box containing Jane's belongings, wished her a happy retirement, and told her to leave the office. Jane quickly rifled through the box and noticed that the small box containing the index cards with client information was not there. She insisted that Sandy return it to her, which Sandy refused to do, explaining that it was property of the business, contained personal client information, and that she would be in violation of Canadian privacy laws if she were to let Jane take it. Jane's shock had now turned to obstinance, and she refused to leave without the box. Both the other employee and Sandy's boyfriend had started to get involved, repeatedly telling Jane to just leave. Sandy then informed Jane that if she didn't leave, they would have to call the RCMP, Canadian Police, at which point Sandy's boyfriend dialed 911 to inform the dispatcher of a disgruntled former employee at XYZ Travel Agency who was refusing to leave the premises. Within a few minutes, 2 officers arrived, and Jane immediately ran to the door, ranting about being fired and about the missing box of client info. In order to de-escalate the situation, one officer told Jane to come outside and explain to him her side of the story. The other officer remained in the office to hear Sandy's side of the story, agreeing that Jane was not legally entitled to the box of client info. The other officer then re-entered the business and told Jane to wait outside. He said that Jane was insisting that Sandy was holding on to her personal belongings, namely a box of important information. Both Sandy and the other officer who had spoken to her explained the contents of the box to the other officer, who in turn agreed it was not Jane's property. The police officers then picked up the larger box of Jane's belongings, took it outside to Jane, and told her she needed to go home. To rub salt in Jane's wounds, the next day, Sandy put up a large sign in the window of the business congratulating Jane on her retirement, and even put a small announcement in the local newspaper doing the same thing. The icing on the piece of revenge cake was Sandy, when filling out the necessary government forms for when an employee quits or gets fired or retires, made sure to check the box labeled retired for the reason for Jane no longer being employed. By doing so, Jane was ineligible to collect unemployment insurance benefits. Am I the jerk for kicking out my boyfriend and his daughter? I started seeing a guy roughly a year and a half ago. He has a 9-year-old, almost 10-year-old daughter named Chrissy. I have an 11-year-old son as well. We met each other's kids 3 months back, and last month they started having weekend visits here. It's been a super hard adjustment for me especially. The kids get along for the most part, but I'm just having a really hard time. My son has always been a fairly good kid and hardly ever given me issues. He never drew on walls or broke anything of importance or talked back. Aside from occasionally, obviously, no kid is perfect, and he was always super quick to ask permission to touch my stuff. I personally think I lucked out, and I knew that not all kids were as well behaved as my kid, but I wasn't ready, I don't think. I'm just overwhelmed. So since she has been doing weekend visits here, she stays in my guest room. She has destroyed a lot, rips holes in the mattress, and then says they were already there. They weren't. Draws on the walls and windowsill with makeup and marker. She put a hole in my wall and said it was already there. I can buy a brand new thing of shampoo and conditioner and it's 100% gone and in the trash by the end of her shower, which lasts 45 minutes every single time. She stomps her feet and slams doors when we have to speak to her and knocks things off the walls. She's generally a good kid, but she is so destructive. What really set me off was her coming here this weekend with her dad. My son was at his father's, and I was called into the office to do a signing which would only take roughly an hour max, so I left them here without me. Well, when I got back, she was sitting at the kitchen table with all of my photo albums laying in front of her, cutting out the faces and everything else on these photos and gluing them to her scrapbook. Photos that I cannot get back, as they were printed out years ago when I was in foster care, and those were the only copies I had. Photos of my friends that have passed as well. I went to my boyfriend, who was on the phone outdoors, and told him they needed to leave, explained the situation, and told him I was done. Those photos, as stupid as it may be, were a huge part of my childhood, and now they are destroyed. I told him I was done speaking to him about his daughter destroying my stuff, and it was time to go. He thinks I'm the jerk for throwing a year and a half down the drain over some pictures. Am I? Not the jerk. That would upset me too. He sounds like a bad father. Curious what his responses have been to her destroying your stuff in the past. If he doesn't respect your property, he doesn't respect you. OP. He has the same, "you know you can't do that" talk with her every time. That's literally it. The same conversation every single time. He said it so much to her that she will literally say it with him and then be like,
Yeah, Dad, I know. You've already told me.
and then she will be good for like a day and go right back to it. Not the jerk. It wasn't over the pictures. Is he stupid? It's about the disrespect he's been allowing to happen, and that was the last straw for you. Honestly, good kids don't do that kind of stuff. If any of my stepkids had done those kinds of things, I'd have done the exact same thing as you. It's just plain rude. Not the jerk. That sounds heartrending. After all of the previous incidents, why wasn't he supervising her? He's at fault just as much as she is. OP. He's always on the phone with his father. His mother is ill and they live in another state, so his dad calls very often with updates and stuff, and I totally get that, but the second he leaves the room, his daughter is destroying something. Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk for kicking them out or not? Please let us know.
That kid sounds like an absolute monster. You know what they say, spare the rod, spoil the brat.
Am I the jerk for telling my cousin she ate meat? I, 22 female, have a cousin who's 21, Paige. She's vegan. I love her. She's always been like a sister to me. On my dad's side, I have another cousin who's 26, Dave. He's a really nice person too, but I didn't really grow up with him as he's older and his family lives far away from us. Well, 2 days ago, we were at this dinner my aunt, Dave's mom, was hosting. It was a dinner to celebrate Dave's engagement. Dave's fiancée, Laura, insisted on cooking. Apparently, she's very well known for her food, and everyone in my family who's tasted her food loves it. I personally never had, and I was open to it as I love trying new stuff. While Laura was cooking, Paige approached her to remind her that she's vegan. She took the time to do it before Laura started dinner. Fast forward to dinner. I found some meat in it. Paige asked me about it, which Laura responded and said she used fake meat for Paige. She didn't doubt Laura started to eat. I will admit, I found it quite odd that Laura had fake meat, or that my aunt would have had any since they're both carnivorous. After dinner, almost everyone was outside, but 3 of us, including Laura. I asked her if she really used fake meat for Paige, and she said,
Oh no, if she's vegan, she gotta bring her own food.
While laughing. I was shocked and in disbelief. I went outside, pulled Paige aside, and I told her. I just couldn't keep it from her, and I felt bad for Paige. I saw the anger rising up in her face while she got up and screamed at Laura inside the house. What she didn't know is that everyone else could hear. It ended up with Laura being completely embarrassed and Paige leaving the house. Laura went up to me screaming that I shouldn't have told her and that everyone was having a great time until I opened up my mouth. Everyone at the dinner are taking her side, saying I shouldn't have said anything and that it wasn't my business. They all said that Laura was new to the family and that it was wrong of me to embarrass her like that. I don't know what to do. All of them are saying I did something wrong and that it could have just been a one-time thing and that Paige would have never noticed. She messaged me earlier saying thank you for telling her. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. Laura was 1000% the jerk for saying it was fake meat when it wasn't. She could have just told the truth and maybe Paige could have eaten around it. Serving meat to a person who is vegan without them knowing is truly messed up. Not the jerk. Laura was pretty malicious here and wanted to lie about it because, haha, vegans are fun to mess with. I'm not a vegan myself, but we need to respect other people's dietary choices and restrictions. If we want to take it a step further, if your cousin had been vegan for long enough time, her digestive system would have been sensitive to meat, and she may not have been able to digest it without getting sick since her body would no longer be used to it. Effectively, the fiancé would be fine giving someone food poisoning because everyone else is having a good time. Not the jerk. Laura is marrying into the family and refusing to respect another family member. Paige deserved to know. And to any family that tells you that you were in the wrong, throw that respect right at them. Just like Laura didn't respect Paige's request for vegan food, I feel no need to respect Laura's desire for me to keep silent. Paige deserved to know who in this family is going to treat her with respect and who isn't. Now we all know. Impressive combination of self-righteousness and perfect timing for maximal drama. No host should lie to someone who asks what's in a dish, but part of you knows that it was a jerk way to handle things, unless you just came here for a victory lap. Everyone sucks here. Everyone sucks here. No need to cover why the ant is the jerk. You can read the other 50 comments for that. But who just rocks up to a party and reminds the cook that they're vegan? Auntie's probably been cooking half the day. Even if she's been a vegan forever and it's well known, you aren't in a restaurant. The aunt was doing her normal cooking. If she had had some notice, she could have bought something at the shop to accommodate. Turning up and reminding someone about their issues is a jerk move. I'm a celiac. If I go to a gathering, I'm either taking my own food, making sure in advance there's something I can eat, or going hungry and not saying a darn thing. If you've got dietary requirements, that's on you to figure out. I hate putting anyone out for what's a me problem. You might find the rest of your family are more annoyed at your cousin rocking up at the 11th hour than anything else. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or Laura? Please let us know.
Why do some people just love to feed meat to vegans without them knowing about it? And y'all thought I was evil.
You can't work overtime even though we're 3,000 behind. Okay, I won't then. I used to work for this horrible job. I was a calibration technician, and my job along with the two others we had was to keep our tools and robots in the plant in line with our customer specs. Failure to do so would allow our customers to pull out of their contracts with no legal ramifications, so an important job. However, the rest of the plant didn't think so, and neither did my supervisor, who the company hired off the street with literally no knowledge of the job at all. Story for another day there. Anyways, we were behind on calibrations big time. This was due mostly to the fact that the lines refused to give us the tools to calibrate them because they didn't want to affect production, and my so-called supervisor had no spine and kept telling us to work around it. For reference, we kept 6,000 different tools and robots calibrated, and almost 3,000 in the system were overdue. So yeah, we were in trouble, and it was only a matter of time. One of our customers had called and said the next Monday they were coming in for an inspection, which you think would be a big ol' "oh no" moment, but no one seemed to care. I volunteered to work that weekend to get everything on that customer's line calibrated so we could avoid the crap storm. But my boss told me that he couldn't approve any overtime without a detailed list of what I planned to do. I told him I couldn't give him a list ahead of time as I had no clue which tools were where or what I would have to replace, but I could log it all as I went and give it to him Monday. He said no, it was either now or I wasn't allowed to show up, so I didn't. Next Monday, customer comes in. Within an hour of him being there, realizes almost all of their tools and robots are 4 months out of date. Immediately shuts down production, sends those employees home, and pulls their contract because now they had to recall 4 months worth of product. They start slamming on my department, to which I just looked at my boss, laughed, and then quit because forget that. One of my friends that worked there after I left told me the customer renegotiated their contract much more in their favor, meaning the company got paid way less than they were originally per product, and the company took a loss on profits that year because apparently the customer went and told all the other customers it could, and a crap storm hit that place. They ended up selling the place after another year. Landlord tries to defraud us and ends up losing his visa instead. This happened a long time ago, but I recently found out about the end result and figured that it might belong here. If you've never heard of the US EB-5 visa program, then don't worry, I hadn't either. From what little research I've gathered, this is essentially a program where foreign nationals can fast-track US residency visa status by contributing financially to approved community investment projects. I don't think that the specifics are that relevant, but feel free to add if I've missed anything important. So when my husband and I were still dating and first looked for a place to live together, we settled on a small townhouse. It was old and needed work, but the rent was reasonable and it was in a neighborhood we liked. The landlord had recently purchased the property, but didn't live there and wanted renters to help pay for the mortgage, I assume. We found the house on a realty website. It had been sold less than a month before we moved in and still had photographs posted by the seller. This will be important later. We liked the place, applied, and got accepted. We moved in and lived happily ever after. The end. No, but seriously, landlord left us alone. We lived there for a few years, paid rent on time, never had issues until we moved out. We had to pay nearly $5,000 in refundable security deposits, and when we moved out, our landlord repaid half. We were confused, as the lease laid out the steps the landlord had to take in order for them to keep the deposit. Central to that requirement, landlord had 45 days to provide us with an itemized list of damages we caused, as well as the cost to fix each thing. 45 days came and went, and no itemized list. So we contacted them and asked for the list. We received a mostly blank one-page invoice for $2,500 to repaint, remove TV mounts, patch holes, etc. It wasn't itemized, and there were no individual charges. So we asked for pictures of the alleged damages. Landlord immediately got hostile and refused. So we filed suit. Landlord hired an attorney to represent him, and the attorney submitted an itemized list as well as pictures. We printed date-stamped copies of the photos posted by the previous realtor, the same photos submitted by landlord's clueless lawyer. The clerk overseeing the matter found in our favor immediately because landlord had lied about the photographic evidence. Landlord was also found to be in breach of contract and was assessed treble damages plus interest, penalties, and court costs. Yay for us. But he didn't pay, so we submitted to a collection agency. I don't really understand the particulars. We eventually recovered most of the final judgment, so we were happy and left it at that. Until, unbeknownst to us, landlord was an EB-5 applicant. Apparently, the breach of contract, collection, and shenanigans surrounding the dishonesty regarding the lawsuit made it back to whomever was reviewing their visa application. There were other issues too, I'm sure. Landlord's visa application was denied. He ended up having to cash out of his US investments and won't be eligible for this visa again. The final outcome was an unintended consequence, but I kind of feel like he got what he deserved. Don't eat at restaurants if you can't even afford it. Okay then, we won't. After reading about entitled waitstaff, it reminded me of what I experienced new to North America. At the time, I had just moved from a small village in Europe. When I had moved to Canada, I met up with others from my tiny area in Europe. Being from the same little country, we all became close. I had become friendly with a next-door neighbor who was a waitress at a mid to high-level restaurant in this town. She told me I should stop by, and so I did. I brought my friends along, and it became a thing, where 9 to 12 of us would come in and eat and be served by her, at least once a week, every single week, often 2 times a week. I asked her if that was okay, but she never seemed overwhelmed, and we often caught her just chilling at the front desk once she was done with the initial plates. More on that later. Again, we are not from a tipping country, so I initially was going to tip 15%. Then I was graciously informed by the host that an auto 18% tip was added to the bill for groups larger than 6. Okay, great. Didn't have to figure out how much to tip. After almost 3 months or so of this, she stops by as I'm taking out my trash. One thing to know about her is that she seems nice, but also has no tact, and can have a bossy demeanor. She tells us she enjoys having us as customers and loves seeing us enjoy the food, but that we should be tipping 20% minimum. Heavy emphasis on the minimum. Also, good tippers would tip at least 30%. I'm a bit stunned that of all the things she'd talk about, this was it. So I simply say, I'm sorry, okay. She finishes off with her signature sweet smile and the words, "Sorry, hun, if you can't afford to eat out, then you shouldn't be doing so." Now, if she was polite and said something like, "By the way, it's customary to tip this much if we do a good job. I understand you might not know the customs here," then I would have understood. But many times I remember she was inattentive as a waitress. We'd often have to flag her down after making eye contact, where she'd just wait behind the counter. Like I said, 20% was not out of the question, it was the way she said it. So I mentioned this encounter to my friends, and after a little talk, we realize we can't afford that. No, not if we also want to be able to purchase other goods such as fine wines, cheese we love, and the like. So we aren't poor, but we aren't rich either. These weekly dinners were little luxuries that we splurged for the sake of friends and feeling special in a fancy restaurant. It didn't break our bank, but it was still a significant amount of money. To tip her properly, and the fact that we all realized were other little things in life we'd rather spend our precious money on, we decided it was too much. Across all of us, it was hundreds in dollars in tips alone per week. That's a lot for us. We could use that money to rent a pool hall, fishing tours, which are very expensive, etc. So we did what any responsible adult would do. We stopped buying what we couldn't afford. It was far cheaper to host our gatherings in someone's house and to do a potluck or make a deli board, etc. Now, discussing this with other neighbors, I hear that she has said something to that sort to other people in the neighborhood. Invite out to eat, then tell them off later if the tip is too low. They always have said the same thing, 20% minimum. Service wasn't the best, very hurried, not very attentive, etc. And the entitlement. Anyways, we stopped eating at that restaurant and having her as a waitress. Mind you, I never stopped saying hi to her, kept up my pleasantries, etc. But now, after we all of a sudden stopped coming in, she had a scowl on her face when she'd see me, kept her responses quick, and stopped saying hi as much. And then, about a month after we stopped, one of the other neighbors mentioned to me how she was complaining that her tips weren't great anymore, and that she couldn't afford to get her fillers in her cheeks at the new medical spa down the road. Oh well, like you said, don't eat out if you can't afford it. My wife is demanding to quit her job and be a stay-at-home wife. I'm 28, male, and my wife, who's 31, has recently started to express interest in being a stay-at-home wife to prep for being a stay-at-home mom. We don't have kids and haven't been trying, and before getting married, we talked about kids and work-home arrangement, and we agreed that we'd both work prior to and once we had kids, and agreed that we'd take turns with the stay-at-home portion for the first year or two after potential kids were born, then both go back to work. Now she wants to do away with that and wants to be a stay-at-home wife until we have kids and then be a stay-at-home mom. I don't want that. I never wanted that, and I made that clear from the start when we got serious. I enjoy my job a lot, but my salary can't sustain a family, and I don't want to go back to school and change careers like she wants me to make it happen. I don't want to take up a second job either, knowing I'd still be doing half the housework and childcare. Not that that's a bad thing. Whereas both my mom and her parents are local, she'd have plenty of help during the day and be able to get downtime. We had dinner at my mother's a couple of days ago with my sister and her kids. While we were there, my wife goes,
Your son's being mean. He won't let me be a stay-at-home mom.
First, my family took this as she's pregnant and they got excited, so I had to tell them that she wasn't yet. She just wants to be a stay-at-home wife. It turned into this 3-on-1 conversation about how I should let her stay home if that's what she really wants, and I should be taking care of her and finding a way to make this happen for her. Finally, I go, Would you two help her with the house whenever she needs it? Of course, that's what family is for, especially when you start having kids, we'll help. Cool, keep that same energy and help me pay all of our bills and every other expense to upkeep our current quality of life if you feel so strongly she should get to stay home. They did not like that and told me I was being overdramatic. My mom called me stubborn and told me to find corners to cut to afford everything on my salary and drop things like streaming services, some of my hobbies, go from 2 cars to 1, etc. We left and my wife wasn't too happy on the way home. She says I was out of line for saying that to my mom and sister, especially since she thinks I was serious. Was I the jerk for telling my mom and sister to pay our bills if they wanted me to go along with it? Also, please stop with the vasectomy messages. They aren't 100% reversible. Success rates go down each year post-procedure, and I do want kids someday. I am mindful that a baby trap is always possible. Edit 2. Holy wow, this blew up. Thanks everyone for all of your responses. I do know to be careful of oopsie babies right now. For those of you insisting I reconsider, no. Look, I'm glad that stay at home and one income works for you all and you enjoy it, but it's not for me. I'm well aware one income means being financially tight, but it's more than that. I don't want the stress of making sure I'm making enough money on my own with 2 jobs and also doing my part in the house and being a parent. I'd much rather get to spend time with my kids when I have them, not be a stranger that falls asleep at dinner and spends a bit of time like my father was. Since this post was more about my mom and sister, I know all about the issues my wife is presenting at the moment and my options. I'm going to tell them to lay off. Either they do, or I just drop contact with them, but I won't be giving them an ultimatum about it. Not the jerk, because you didn't bring it up to them, your wife did. She was being manipulative and you called her out on it. Be careful, I could see an, oops, we're pregnant, now I have to stay home moment coming. This is exactly what happened with my brother and his now ex-wife. She loved spending but didn't like working, and even though they had agreed not to have kids for a while, until both of their careers stabilized, she was suddenly, accidentally pregnant. We tried to tell him, but he wouldn't believe it at first. Fast forward a few months, she's off work because the pregnancy was too hard for her to keep working. It might have been, I don't know for certain, but I find it highly suspicious that she managed to have a pregnancy that was simultaneously so horrible she couldn't work, but easy enough that she could travel around the country. My brother was stressed, working overtime in a job he hated, buying the most expensive stuff for the baby because she wanted it, and thousands of dollars in debt. Eventually, he came back to us and told us that she had indeed gotten pregnant on purpose, and that was the end of their marriage. Not the jerk, and make sure all your bases are covered, OP. Your wife has already tried manipulating your family to get her way. I wouldn't be surprised if the accidental pregnancy is next. Not the jerk. I've been here, and the divorce will be horrible once you have kids. Get out now. She's shown her true colors. This is the warning sign. Not the jerk, but this sounds like a huge marinara flag. Anyone who is so entitled and honestly narcissistic before kids is only going to get worse after. Let's be real here. She wants to stay home, not work, still have you be responsible for half the housework, and is pressuring you to change careers away from something you enjoy to be able to afford her a responsibility-free lifestyle. And on top of that, she tried to get your family involved. This reeks of childish entitlement. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his wife? Please let us know.
Considering you don't have kids yet, this is the perfect opportunity to bounce. Or you could end up being tied to her for the rest of your life. The choice is yours.
Am I the jerk for saying no to picking up my son's half-sister from school? I'm a single mom of 2 boys, ages 11 and 10. Their father and I divorced 5 years ago after I learned he was cheating on me. He got her pregnant either right before he told me, and that was why he confessed, or right after. But our divorce was not an easy one. He wanted to stay friends, and I could not look at him after what he did. He and I were together for over 13 years. He was also a friend before he was my boyfriend and husband, and to have him betray me like that and treat me as he had was awful. He married his affair partner. They had a daughter within months of our separation, followed by a son after the divorce and their marriage. Last year, they discovered that his wife had cancer. What followed was a lot of fighting between the two of us again. He wanted me to help him and his wife out. He said their kids, who are currently 5 and 3, needed family beyond just him and his wife. His own family disowned him for our divorce. They were extremely religious, and she has no family. I told him it would be over my dead body I would help him. He argued that it was for the kids, and if not for his kids with her, then for our boys, who could see their family heal and be one. I told him he stopped any chance of that happening when he cheated on me. What I did not expect was for him to tell his daughter's school to call me when she got sick. He was at work at the time and couldn't leave apparently because he had already missed a lot of work due to his wife, and she was home recovering from chemo. I got the call, was asked if I would pick her up, and I said no. Several hours later, he went off on me on the phone for leaving his sick kid at school when I knew they had nobody. This is when he told me how he couldn't leave and how his wife was resting. I told him the babysitter for his son should have been called over me. He told me he was in daycare and I should be ashamed because she was a sick kid who's going through a lot and I could have helped. He told me he hoped our sons were going to be ashamed of me. They aren't, and I argued back with him over the phone at the time. But I guess part of me does feel bad for the kid. My sons also sensed an atmosphere while they were with their dad after the incident when they talked about me, and I hate that for them. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. He has the nerve to try to manipulate you after cheating? Those aren't your kids and not your problem. I also feel bad for the girl, but it's his mess to solve. Give an inch, he'll take a mile. Say no now to prevent future problems. OP. That's my concern. I do not want to be part of these 2 kids' lives in any big way, and if I say yes to one thing, then it gets harder to say no again, and that establishes more of a relationship than I ever want with them. Your ex is trying to use your basic decency to manipulate you. No responsible parent puts down an emergency contact without getting confirmation by the contact. This is all on him. As sad and unfortunate a situation as this is for his kids, you have the right to refuse to be their carer. He put his daughter in this position, not you. He is to blame for any discomfort she may have experienced, not the jerk. Not the jerk. What kind of fool lists his ex-wife as an emergency contact for his affair kid? The audacity of him to get mad at you. The only kids of his you need to care for are the ones you share with him. Do not let him tell you otherwise. Too bad he tanked his own life, but that's not your problem at all. If he can't handle the situation he got himself into, he needs to figure out a way to get himself through it. You're not responsible for his mistakes. While it's unfortunate with his wife, you're still not obligated to help him at all with anything except as related to your own kids. He can apologize and make amends with his family, or go out and make friends and get support that way. It's not your job. You very clearly told him no. He put you on the list anyway, and then screamed at you when you didn't comply with his assignment? Sign your kids up for some counseling, because this guy is a jerk when he does not get what he wants, and they should not have to deal with their father's BS behavior. He cheats, but still wants to be friends after betraying you? His family disowns him, and he demands that you step up because his kids need family? Then he wants you to do it so his boys can see their family heal and become one. He's the one that caused it to break. Still won't comply with his demands, he'll sign you up with the school without your knowledge or consent, then try to manipulate you with guilt, saying your kids will be ashamed. Hello? Does this man have not one friend or neighbor that could pick up a kid from school and drop her off at home? Zero? That's telling. Sounds like people that he can't manipulate with guilt don't hang out with him and don't accept his assignments. Were you also supposed to watch his kid the rest of the day since his wife is resting? Take care of his sick kid and infect yours too? Maybe you should also watch his kid instead of daycare, clean his house, make dinner, and drive her to chemo. His shoes might need to be shined too. You are allowed to say no. You should send a letter, return receipt to the school that says you aren't that kid's emergency contact and their parent put you on the list without your permission. Copy it to your divorce lawyer and your ex. If you give in now, his demands will only increase. He needs to find solutions to his problems that are not volunteering you, not the jerk. If you don't like it, you can leave. All right then. My dad works for an employee-owned civil construction company. They make water processing plants, among other public utility buildings. Contracts can range from $10 to $50 million and more after expenses. They spend the vast majority of said budget on materials. Again, millions of dollars. One company they get parts from is their main supplier of pipes and plumbing doohickeys. They spend about a third of their budget with them. Again, specialty in water treatment plants. He's even received awards for being one of their top 5 customers. 2 years ago, it was a fire hydrant cookie jar, which he found hilarious. This particular job was on the East Coast in a state where my dad has yet to work. As such, he goes to the office personally to meet these people, on principle, mind you. He's just that type of guy. He meets the staff, or most of them. What he didn't know was that one lady was out that day, her day off. Eventually, the budget has been worked out and the structural base has been mostly completed. So my dad calls the suppliers to place his order. You know exactly who he gets, the one lady he didn't get to meet. So the conversation goes a bit like this. Dad: hello, this is Dad. I need to order some parts. Lady: of course. Do you have an account with us? Dad: yes, this construction company. Lady types a bit. I'm sorry, but I don't see an account for this construction company. Yes, we do. Could you please check it again? I'm afraid we don't have an account for this construction company. Now, it's important to note that A, my dad takes no crap, and he knows she didn't recheck because he couldn't hear her rather loud keyboard typing, and B, to create an account requires a credit history check, which can take 5 to 10 business days to get done. This company, my dad included, runs a tight ship, so this is entirely unacceptable. Dad: look, can I speak with the owner? I met him yesterday, and I would like to clear this up quickly. Lady: I'm afraid owner is unavailable right now. I could create an account for you if you'd like. Dad: look, I need to buy $70,000 of prep materials, and I need them by next week. Please try again to find our account. This construction company is one of your top clients, and if you ask me to create a new account, I will go elsewhere. Lady, still not trying again, says, I apologize for the inconvenience. If you feel that you could get better service elsewhere, then you are free to do so. My dad immediately hung up fuming. He had to take 2 more days and $10,000 more, but he got the parts on time. He then came into the office a week later, passed by the front desk, and knocked on the owner's door. Sir, you can't go back there. Wouldn't you know, it was the lady from before. My dad just waited, and when the owner opened the door, he greeted Dad like an old friend. After explaining the situation, the owner immediately called the lady in, calmly went off on her, and showed her exactly how to find the construction company in the future. My dad isn't someone to get people fired, better to humiliate them into competence. The owner then called corporate, who authorized a 10% discount on piping as an apology. This contract had a piping budget of $9 million, so that discount went straight to profits. As a stockholder, that goes to my dad's pockets as well. He's never had a problem before nor since. Want some free gas? I got you, bro. So, several years ago, my friend, we'll call him Boris, and I would always help each other do the spring cleanup for our properties. This included taking out damaged trees, preparing garden plots, or taking care of our weed-infested yards. I was going to be first on the cleanup detail, so I prepared tools and implements the Friday before the big cleanup was to happen, sharpening tools and chainsaw chains, lawnmower blade, and just getting everything in order. Among those tasks was mixing gas with 2-cycle oil, finished up kind of late, and generally put things away for the next day. The next morning, Boris shows up with coffee and biscuits around 8 a.m. As we were sitting on his tailgate enjoying breakfast, my neighbors ride by in their beat-up Chevy Cavalier, smoking like a freight train. We will call them Rocky and Bullwinkle. Boris and I made the usual jokes about the amount of smoke pouring from the exhaust. Darn, bet they go to the gas station and fill up with oil and check the gas. We soon finished breakfast and thought no more about it. As we began to get the tools laid out and lay out an attack plan, I could not find my gas cans. No mixed gas, regular gas, or gas cans in general. That's when it dawned on us why the car Rocky and Bullwinkle were driving was smoking so bad. I'm upset to say the least. Well, all Boris and I could do was go shopping for gas cans, gas, and more 2-cycle oil. After we returned, we saw Rocky and Bullwinkle pass by several times, but all in all, we got a lot done. The next weekend, we dedicated to clean up at Boris's. A weekend or two go by, and we have a family dinner at my wife's and Rocky and Bullwinkle's grandparents'. Towards the latter part of the evening, we were having a few drinks. Most people had left, and myself and wife's grandfather were shooting the breeze when I had to go to the bathroom. As I was doing so, I saw a gas can with a very distinct paint on it. I inquired from the old man about how it came into his possession, and he stated Rocky and Bullwinkle left it there. I simply explained it was mine, as was another, and loaded them in my truck. It got to me every time that crappy car with my post neighbors went by. So I hatched a plan from a rotten egg. I went and bought a few gallons of gas, a few gallons of diesel fuel, and some other various oils. I made a concoction of these different chemicals and filled my new 6-gallon gas can I had purchased. With some clean gas, I filled the lawnmower and cut some grass that evening, making sure Rocky and Bullwinkle saw me. Then I put everything away, but forgot and left that rotten egg gas can out. I got up and went to work the next morning and didn't even think to check on the can. But when I got home, I checked and it was gone. My wife informed me that my plan must have worked as she watched Rocky and Bullwinkle go in and out with the car not only smoking, but spitting and sputtering as well. The last time they rode out, they didn't ride back in. They gave me about an hour of peace before they came over and wanted to know if I could look at their car and see what was wrong. If it could not be fixed on the side of the road, maybe tow it home. My response? I've had a long day and I have a migraine. Maybe tomorrow. I saw the panic set in when I told them that. That's when they told me they had no insurance and it was on a main road. Tough luck. So the highway patrol did run across it and it was towed. It was going to cost them around $500 to get it out of impound, plus they had to have current registration and insurance. Car wasn't worth it. Well, they're the type of people that good luck just falls on them, and the pastor for a local church gave them an old Ford Taurus. Took me a few cans of rotten egg gas, but I got the motor to lock up after about a month. This time, it quit in their grandparents' yard, so they scrapped it, and as luck would have it, they got their income tax returns. They bought a nice-looking Ford F-150, but it began having problems too. Smoked really bad. They did take it to a mechanic that eventually found the problem. He got the truck running right again for about $1,500, and I've never had any more gas come up missing. Thanks for reading. Wait, so first it was Rocky and Bullwinkle were the neighbors, but then it was them at the grandparents' house. Brother-in-law? Cousins? Made-up story? OP. They're my wife's cousins. Am I the jerk for giving my mother a house on the condition that my brother and his family do not come live with her? I'm 45, female. My mother is 76, and she's a very simple person. My father abandoned us when the youngest was 6 months old, and my mother was never the same mentally. I have a good financial condition. I try to help as much as I can with the groceries and bills, but it's very complicated because my mother refuses to come live with me and remains in the terrible house that my father gave her in the divorce. My brother, my sister-in-law, and their 3 kids, who are 13, 9, and 5, live in the house at the back. And the house was tiny with a big yard, but brother built his house in the back and made the house even smaller. And he uses my mom as a free babysitter to take care of the kids he had, not to mention the dogs he adopted and never paid for their food. And several times, their kids go to eat at my mother's house. Keep in mind that my mother receives a low salary in retirement that is only really enough for her to support herself. I've been saving money for more than a decade to buy her a house, and I finally got it. It's a simple house with a 1-bedroom, 1-bathroom, with a big yard and a perfect garden for her. I talked to her, and she agreed with me that it would be better for the house to be in my name because I know my brothers and what they are capable of at any given opportunity, but it would have a lifetime clause for her only. I warned her that I didn't want my brother to move in with her, but in return, she wouldn't have to worry about bills and food anymore, as I would help. She looked relieved. I told my brother, at her request, she was next to me, and he said it would be difficult to accommodate everyone, but eventually he would expand the house to house everyone. I saw the despair on my mother's face, so I just made it very clear that the house was for my mother and not for them. He started to say yes, but he could help with the bills and food, and that his and his mother's house was too bad for a family of 5. I said no, that mother accepted the gift knowing that he wouldn't live there and that due to their history, I wouldn't trust him to pay the bills. He doesn't pay my mother, and I wouldn't be paying for 5 people. He started calling me selfish and saying this was a jerk to give on condition, knowing how bad my mom's house is and that she obviously has no other option to accept. He said I was purposely harming him and posing as a monster he is not. My mom is more relieved to get out of the house, but my brothers are calling me a jerk, even more so because the house is in my name. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. You're saving your mom from your mooch of a brother, and he's just being spiteful because you're doing so in a way that he cannot exploit. Not the jerk. However, if you haven't already, you should consider consulting an attorney to have a plan to enforce keeping your brother out of your mother's house. I should say your house because you're the owner, fortunately. That way, if he tries to step over the line and invade her space, your property, you can take action. And make sure you let him know you have consulted a lawyer and there will be consequences if he does anything improper. Am I the jerk for telling my sister there is nothing that would ever make me ask her to be a bridesmaid? This involves me, 24, female, and my sister, who's 23. We were really close for 10 years. I loved having a sibling so close in age. Sometimes I felt like my parents babied her more than was fair, but her and I were cool. She was a friend and not just my sister, and I would have done anything to protect and defend her. We both got busier for a while, and it was after the business started that I noticed I would get into trouble a lot more, and it never made sense. I was told I was leaving my sister behind, that I needed to learn not to be mean. My parents would talk about seeing me do stuff I had never done. I was so confused. Then one night, I had been at a friend's house and just got home. When I went upstairs, I heard talking downstairs, went down, and heard my sister say that I had told her we could play together, but had ditched her for my friend instead and never even told her. The next morning, Dad told me he remembered me promising my sister to play with her and how I never followed through and that was not a good big sister move. I told him I never promised that, but he shut me down. This continued for months. She would say I had said something that I didn't, or that I was mean to her, that I let her be bullied, that I was pushing her away all the time and breaking promises. None of this was true. I was busier with school and extracurricular stuff, but we still spent time together. It wasn't as much though, but we couldn't have spent the same time together. I told her to stop. She told me there was no way, because I didn't get to ditch her for my friends, or that she should have gotten all my spare time. I told her it wasn't fair and she had friends too. Our relationship turned bitter on my part afterward. I stopped loving her. We would fight anywhere and everywhere. Eventually it built up, and when I was 17 and she was 16, she went to our high school principal and said I had cheated on a test and that I told her at home. My parents were called and I was investigated. Even though the school cleared me, my parents still believed it, and I missed out on a great opportunity because of the allegations were still being investigated. I never forgave her for that. A couple of times after we both moved out, she told extended family members about all the bullying I subjected her to. It further reinforced my dislike of her. Now I'm getting married. I asked my 2 closest friends to be my bridesmaids. My sister found out about this and told me I should have asked her, and told me she wanted to do it. I told her there was nothing in the world that would make me ask her, and I would sooner have no bridesmaid than have her as one. She called me a jerk, and now I'm getting hassle for my family too. My parents have also tried, but they're not even getting an invite because I blame them for believing all this and not putting a stop to it. But I worry I crossed a line. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. Password everything so no messing with the wedding. Good point. Maybe even hire security in case she and the parents decide to crash the wedding or reception. Not the jerk, OP. Why would she think she'd be a bridesmaid or a maid of honor when you're not even inviting your parents? That's just weird. Not the jerk. They crossed a line, not you. When you want someone to be your bridesmaid, it's because she's important to you. Usually that's a sister if you have one, because of what they mean to you. You don't feel this way about your sister. Furthermore, she did you wrong in so many ways and doesn't seem to feel sorry. So you would be right not to invite her at all. Same goes for your parents. My 15-year-old niece keeps giving me a snobby attitude. It's going to be a very long 2 weeks. My niece is staying with me until September 18th because her parents left for their vacation yesterday. She flew in from San Diego yesterday morning and it's been nothing but heck. I live in Colorado, by the way. She keeps nonstop complaining about how cold it is here, as if I have any control of the weather. When she first got to my house, she said, "Do I really have to stay in this?" before even entering. I live in a townhouse. She was upset there is no pool and was like, "Why don't you have a pool? I know you're poor, but everyone should have a pool." My car isn't as nice as her parents' cars, and she keeps complaining how run down it is and is scared it's going to fall apart. I drive a 2016 Honda Accord. There's nothing wrong with it. It's kept clean. Her dad drives an Audi, and her stepmom drives a Maserati. She also keeps making videos around my house, laughing at all of my furniture, the way the house looks, my car, etc. She asked if I got my furniture at IKEA because it looks cheap, and she laughed. She's complaining because there's carpet throughout the house, and only poor people have that, and that the bathrooms have tile floors and not marble, and that she has to shower in a tub shower with a shower curtain. At her house, it's a stand-up shower with marble walls, and there's a glass door. I don't have stand-up showers. She's also mad that there's no sauna in the bathroom. She said straight to my face, "I can't believe I have to stay in this crappy place until my parents get back," and then walked outside and slammed the door and was texting someone, probably her dad. She's very close to him. As of today, my guest bedroom already has stuff out everywhere. The blankets I originally had on the bed, along with the pillows, got thrown into the hallway and replaced with the ones she brought. She has clothes all over the floor. She has a few dishes with half-eaten food sitting on the floor. I told her yesterday no eating or drinking upstairs. She's using the dresser as a vanity and left all of her makeup and used makeup wipes out everywhere. She said if I want the room clean, I can do it myself or hire a maid, then laughed and said, "Oh wait, I forgot. You're too poor for that." I ordered takeout last night from a local restaurant, and she made fun of the menu because the prices were cheap. $25 for a burger is cheap? And she got the $80 filet mignon dinner and threw most of it out because it tasted weird, and she wasn't that hungry. Her dad sent me $650 to feed her and take her to do whatever, so that came from that money. Yesterday, we went to eat at Outback Steakhouse for lunch, and she refused to eat any of her food. She said it looked weird. She said her dad would never take her to a dump like this restaurant. Then she kept complaining she was hungry after we left, and I'm a terrible person for making her starve and wasting her time by making her sit there. We also went furniture shopping because her dad wants to buy her a new bedroom set for her 16th birthday next month, along with her trip to Hawaii. She's being very picky, and he wanted me to check out the prices of places around here, see if she likes anything, and get back to him on it. He said she has a budget of $8,000 total for her bedroom. She wants either these upholstered princess bed frames or these mirror bed frames, which are pricey. It's around $3,000 to $5,000 for the ones she likes, and that's just for the bed frame by itself. She also wants a vanity, a bench, a nightstand, a chandelier, and a dresser with it, and they all have to match the bed. I tried showing her cheaper options, and she screamed at me in the store, "I have no taste, and that it's her bedroom furniture. Stay out of it." She told me to go back to the car and wait because I'm annoying her. I was about ready to leave her there, honestly. She then wanted to go clothes shopping and knows her dad sent me money. I said, "You can get an outfit," meaning one. You still need food from the grocery store. She was not happy about that and told me to stop being a cheap jerk with her dad's money. She was adamant about getting this one dress and a pair of heels that was $230. That's less money than she has to spend on groceries and other things. She knows this and still went with the purchase. She wanted me to buy food for her from Whole Foods and use some of my money if I run out of the money her dad gave me. I was going to buy her her own groceries because she's a very picky eater. I suggested a local grocery store because it's cheaper and she can get more food. She started yelling at me and calling me names, so we went home instead. She ignored me the rest of the car ride and was texting someone. She got out of the car and started crying, saying she misses her dad and she hates me. She hates my house, it's so embarrassing and trashy, and wishes she could be on vacation with her dad, and it's not fair she has to stay with me, and ran into the house crying. She keeps yelling at me to buzz off and stop talking to her, that I'm annoying, to go away, etc. when I say anything to her. I was eating a sandwich earlier, around almost 4 p.m., and she came downstairs and said, "Nice to see you feed your fat face while I starve. You're such a selfish jerk. You know that I hope you choke on it," and rolled her eyes and went back upstairs. I ordered pizza for dinner, and she started crying at the table that she misses her dad. I asked if she had called him and talked to him today, and she said in a rude tone, "What do you think?" and rolled her eyes. Then she was complaining about how gross the pizza was and got up and took the box and threw it in the garbage. She then told me to go to a gym and to lose weight, said that I'm disgusting and went outside. She also just took a super long shower and said she's going to keep doing it every day since it's so cold here. And if I don't like it, tough, because she doesn't like being cold or being here. She swore at me for not turning on the heat in the house. It's not cold enough to turn the heat on, in my opinion. I usually don't start doing that until the end of October, beginning of November, when the highs are only in the 50s. It's going to be a very long 2 weeks. She goes to a private school, and they are doing online school again this year. Her first day is September 7th, and she's already telling me that I can't force her to log in and do her schoolwork, that she doesn't care about it. She's right, I can't. But I don't want to be blamed for her being tardy. I know her dad will be pretty upset since he's paying for her to go there. My jealous Karen sister caused thousands of dollars of destruction at my house. I'm 22, female. I have 3-year-old twin boys, and I had a baby girl not even 2 days ago. My sister, Jody, is 34 and has been suffering with infertility for the past 10 years, as well as repeated miscarriages. I used to feel really bad for her and also a bit guilty, as I got pregnant twice while I wasn't even trying to. It caused some tension between us when I was pregnant with my twins because she was jealous, and I was already feeling intense guilt. This time around, she wasn't as jealous, but I still felt it was unfair. As my husband and I have decided we are done having kids, I offered to be a surrogate for my sister as soon as I'm cleared after this baby, and she seemed like she was absolutely over the moon with that. In turn, she offered to watch the twins while I was in labor with my new baby, which was a relief on my part. I went into labor on Thursday morning, and Jody came over to watch the kids while my husband and I went to the hospital. She seemed like she was in a great mood and promptly rushed us out the door. Everything seemed fine until we got home this morning to find thousands of dollars worth of destruction to pretty much every baby item we've purchased. Even the crib mattress was torn open. Everything was ruined. Jody tried to pin it on the twins, but they're 3, and this level of destruction had to have been done by an adult. My twins can't even reach some of the stuff that was destroyed, and they certainly do not know how to open diaper packages and tear them apart. I know kids, especially toddlers, can do a lot of damage in a short time, but I also know my kids aren't capable of what happened. I told my sister to get out of my home and stay away from me and my family. I got really angry, and I said a lot of stuff I shouldn't have, but one of them was, "I hope you never have a kid, and if you do,
Then I'll tell it exactly what you've done to mine.
I told her we can't afford to fix the damage she's caused, but since she still denies it, she won't cough it up. I told her because of her, the baby doesn't even have a safe place to sleep. My parents caught wind of what I said, and even after I explained the situation, they still think I'm being a jerk for saying something so vile to my sister, after all she's done for us. Obviously, my judgment is clouded. So, am I the jerk? Not the jerk. Your sister flew into a jealous rage when faced with all the things she wants and doesn't have. Can you imagine how terrifying that was for your twins? OP, you need to file a police report for destruction of property and maybe even contact the authorities. Your sister is unwell and should not be allowed to provide care to your kids. You didn't know, but now you do. Never let your sister anywhere near you or them. Your sister needs mental health services, and she's not going to get them if your parents would rather pass the blame on to you. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her sister? Please let us know.
I just want to know if while she was tearing everything up, she was like, ree, ree, ree.
Am I the jerk for calling the cops on my husband after he hid my son's motorcycle? I got my son a $7,000 motorcycle for his 18th birthday this past June. My son is obsessed with automobiles and loves motorcycles. In his room, he has plenty of models and posters of motorcycles of all types. His biological dad passed when he was just 12. Now I'm married to my current husband, and he has kids of his own. My husband has always been against my son's interest in motorcycles. He thinks I'm encouraging him to be reckless, distracting him from school and by extension his future, and spoiling him and blowing away money by spending $7,000 on a motorcycle. This caused some tension between him and my son, so I told him to stop complaining about it. Around 2 weeks ago, my son's motorcycle went missing. We opened a police report, but nothing came out of it. It just disappeared. My husband had a smirk on his face the entire time, just walking around saying,
I told you so. You just wasted your money.
This was unbearable to hear, to be quite honest. My mother-in-law visited a few days ago. She was talking about the other house my husband owns and mentioned seeing a motorcycle, one that's similar to the one that we lost, in my husband's garage while she was cleaning it. She goes to clean that house weekly, even though it's empty. My husband plans on giving it to his kids as an inheritance. I was puzzled. I asked if she was certain, but she showed me a photo she took of it, which confirmed that it was indeed my son's motorcycle. I immediately rushed to call my husband and confront him about it. He admitted that he took and hid the motorcycle in his garage as a last resort after me and his stepson kept brushing him and his thoughts off about the $7,000 being spent on something unnecessary and that could cause issues. I blew up at him, demanding he return it. He refused and told me he had been considering selling it and giving the money back to me so I could use it wisely this time. I told him I was serious and that I'd call the police. He literally said,
This is a family matter, and cops can't do anything about it.
I'd had enough, so I called the cops as soon as I ended the call with them. The motorcycle was found and returned, but my husband had to be taken in since there was an open file about the motorcycle going missing. He was let go eventually, but he was livid with me. He came home yelling about how awful what I did was and how crazy my behavior was. I refused to engage in the argument, but he told his entire family about it, and they judged me for calling the police on my own husband, even though I already asked him to return it. He said he was just looking out for my son and that one day we'll realize that he was right, but only when it's too late. My son isn't speaking to me or my husband. I feel horrible about the whole situation, and I'm starting to think I handled this the wrong way. Not the jerk. The debate about whether a motorcycle is a good gift for an 18-year-old is irrelevant, completely red herring. Ignore any responses based on this. Your husband stole an item and he hid it, then allowed you to go to the police about it, smugly knowing they wouldn't turn up anything, and lied to you either overtly or by omission about it. When confronted, he doubled down. No remorse, no contrition. You were right to call him out. You were right to involve the police when he threatened to sell it against your wishes. And my recommendation would be to begin divorce proceedings, because this man does not have any respect for you whatsoever. He's already proven he will commit crimes and file false police reports in order to get his way. He's a walking rotten tomato. My mom was married to a walking rotten tomato when I was a kid and a teen who, among many other things, took the cell phone I paid for when I was in high school and purposely broke it because
This is my house, and I don't like your attitude.
my mom just stood by and defended him like she always did. He comes off as a holier-than-thou,
I'm right and you're wrong.
type that my ex-stepfather was. He's probably been the jerk to his stepson for years. He committed a crime, lied about it, let everyone believe and worry that it was stolen, admits he was going to commit a second crime had his mother not alerted OP that he had the motorcycle, and then he has the audacity to act like he's the victim and the wrong party here because he just can't stand not being right about and or controlling everything and everybody. He's mad because he got caught and thinks his being right and his perceived right to control his stepson's hobbies because he's the one that's right justify theft, manipulation, and lying. I don't blame OP's son for being done with the both of them. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her husband? Please let us know. Sweet older lady saves me from a Karen on the bus. My bus was delayed by 5 hours at a long-distance terminal in the middle of nowhere in rural Florida. I, a short, husky white teen, was dressed in a black button-up, red tie, and black pants with my eyeliner and mascara from the Rocky Horror Show I had attended before traveling, probably looking a bit worse for wear. I was sitting for a decent while when I noticed that an older, probably late 60s or early 70s, lady was trying to do something on a self-service kiosk and muttering to herself in Spanish. She seemed to be getting frustrated and was darting her eyes around for employees, but the place was packed with people due to the delays at around 3 a.m., so not many were around. Someone eventually did try to help her, but I heard "no hablo inglés," causing the person to just look kind of puzzled and walk off. I was in my 3rd semester of Spanish at the time, so I slowly walked over and said, "Excuse me, do you need some help?" She asked if I spoke Spanish, to which I replied that I was still learning, but I would do my best. She clapped her chest with a literal "Dios mío," and we pleasantly worked through what she needed done and went our separate ways. Someone had taken my seat, so I was just standing around for a minute or two when I get the tap on my shoulder. I turned around to see a large Karen with a ton of luggage and a kid in tow. The kid is nose deep into a DS and isn't really paying attention, but she looks me up and down with what appeared to be disgust before demanding that I get her luggage to wherever it has to go. I had no idea where that is and was honestly super exhausted, so I start to say, "I'm sorry, but I don't work." Before I can finish, she butts in with,
Don't you mess with me. This place is going crazy, and every other employee is busy. So even an office guy or supervisor or whatever you are should be out here helping with customers. I saw you help that other lady, so you can darn well help me with my bags.
I raised my hands and started to explain again that I didn't know anything and that I don't work here, but she was not having it and started to raise her voice a bit. At this point, her kid notices her volume, looks up at me with what seemed like a mixture of confusion and embarrassment, then tugs on her shirt and says, "Mom, I don't think he..." She turns quickly and gives him a tss. Not even a shush, just like that loud click hiss noise that dog whisperer guy used on TV. Then she started in on me for being lazy and unprofessional or whatever. Just then, the elderly lady comes up from the side of us, shaking her cane at the large woman and shouts in the best English she could muster, "You leave my nephew alone. He's a good boy." The big woman turned to see this little old lady with straight up lightning in her eyes and the big bit of mahogany inches away from her face, then just turns around and leaves with her kid. No apology, nothing. Once her and her kid are a fair distance away, I thank the older woman, and she just motions for me to follow her. We go outside to a bench by the entrance, and she offers me a cigarette as she lights one up. I say, "No thank you." She then pulls a thermos out of her purse and offers me some coffee. I once again say, "No thank you," but she pours it anyway and comments about how the coffee here is so terrible. Turns out she was visiting from Guatemala to see her son who works with a company that imports, blends, and roasts Guatemalan coffee. We're both coffee snobs, so we just sit and chat about coffee, our families, and why on earth I'm dressed like I am until her bus is called to board. I, of course, offer to help with her luggage, but she says she only has the one small bag and is fine with carrying it. Definitely an interesting capstone to a very interesting weekend. Anger management therapist throws temper tantrum over $2 or $3. I thought this couple would be my last table. It was late and the rest of the section had emptied. But then I was told I'd be getting a 12 to 14 top, and then another. My section was the only place to put them, so much for going home. The couple seemed to be done, so I wanted to get them paid and off my mind. After they declined dessert, I dropped their check off and resumed setting up for my 2 large parties. As I'm stressfully trying to get things moving with one of the parties, the guy from the couple is waving me over to their table. Please don't order anything else, just pay and leave. He's irate and starts arguing with me over the price of their drinks. One of them is discounted because it's on the late night happy hour menu, but the other is not. I tried explaining this to him, but he keeps insisting that if I've discounted one, then I should discount the other. I don't discount the drinks myself. The prices are set in the computer. He's getting more and more annoyed as he's flipping through our drink menu, intent on finding something to support his argument. He turns to the page with a list of drinks that have late-night discounts, and I immediately point to that page. Here, this lists which drinks are… He slams the menu closed on my finger and continues ranting, now about how I should have told him that one of their drinks wasn't discounted, even though they never asked about happy hour discounts. At this point, I've had enough. I had already pulled my finger out of the menu he slammed closed, and I said, "I'm going to find a manager to explain it to you." Then turned and walked towards the kitchen. He hollered,
Where are you going? Why are you walking away?
"Dude, I just told you that I was going to get a manager to explain it to you." I was starting to get irate myself, since he was wasting my time when I needed to take care of the 2 large parties. I explained to my manager that he was crying about not getting a happy hour discount on a non-happy hour drink, that he just wanted to argue with me, and then when I pointed at the page with the list of happy hour drinks, he slammed the book closed on my finger. Oh, and he yelled,
Where are you going?
after I told him I was going to get a manager. I apologized for having to waste her time with this nonsense as she walked over to deal with him. He told my manager that I lost my temper with him and that his girlfriend/date went to wait in the car because she was scared. Scared? He added that he's a therapist, that his office was just up the street, and that she should consider sending me to him for some mandatory counseling. No, I did not lose my temper. And your date did not leave because she was scared. She left because your little temper tantrum over the price of a drink, maybe a $2 or $3 difference, was embarrassing her. After he left, did he leave her his business card, or did I just remember his name from his credit card? We looked up his business and got a huge laugh out of it. It didn't list his qualifications, even if he has any, and most of his Google and Yelp reviews trashed him. Most were sent from people who had been referred from traffic court. The last time I was sent to traffic court, they provided a list of qualified traffic schools to attend, so somehow this clown got on one of those lists. Reviews included people saying he doesn't know what he's doing. He often tells people they have to pay cash because the credit card reader is down that day, i.e. tax fraud. He's not paying taxes on that day's income. And he makes people write positive reviews about what they've learned and accomplished in exchange for their completion documents. What a joke. Am I the jerk for making my stepdaughter feel bad for eating all of my snacks and drinks? My stepdaughter is 10. I'm 30, female, and I have diabetes, as well as other food allergies that prevent me from eating a very large variety of foods that are purchased for consumption in this household. The food and snacks and drinks that I can eat usually tend to be on the more expensive side, and I have to spend way too much time shopping around for bargains so I can actually eat. My stepdaughter is fully aware that these are the only things I can eat, and we had no problems up until roughly 6 months ago. I've been in her life for 8 years, so yes, this is a new behavior. So my favorite food and drink is burritos and Diet Sprite. I can't have either of them due to my allergies, and it took me forever to find a brand that I could actually have. But due to the fact that both of these products are way too expensive, $19 for an 8-pack of burritos, and $12 for a 6-pack of the Sprite knockoff, I don't get them often at all. Maybe once every 3 months or so. I caught my stepdaughter eating and drinking both of them multiple times and had to sit her down and tell her that I don't want her eating those, as they were expensive and for me specifically, and I offered to buy her the regular brand of the same items. She said yes, so I went out and bought them for her, just to find that she was still eating mine and not even touching hers. I asked her why several times, and she shrugged her shoulders and walks off or says,
I don't see why it's a big deal. It's just food.
and rolls her eyes. So I told my husband to do something about it, because he knows my dietary restrictions very well and knows how important not only that is, but also how much I love those specific items and can't have them often. He speaks to her. Everything after that seems fine. However, I just bought the burritos and knockoff organic Sprite again yesterday. I went to go get myself some around 10 p.m. when my stepdaughter was supposed to be in bed. The entire liter was gone. I couldn't find it anywhere. So I go into my stepdaughter's room and she's sitting with not only the Sprite in her lap, but 2 burritos as well. This is when I noticed everything else. My green tea sitting on the floor, gone. My meal containers that I had packed for work under her bed and on her dresser. I thought I was going mental because I couldn't find them anywhere, and turns out that she's been eating them. I've gone many days at work without food because of this. So I told her I had never been so absolutely disappointed and repulsed that someone could lack that much respect and empathy for another individual, and walked out. I woke up my husband. He went down and saw everything, but came up and started screaming at me because apparently I made his kid cry, and now he's worried about her developing anxiety about eating. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk, but this is family therapy time, not am I the jerk time. Something is up with a 10-year-old hoarding food, especially just your food. No need to put up with it, but sounds like you need a therapist to work with her. 100%. Something more is going on here and the internet can't parse it. Get her individual and family therapy. Am I the jerk for giving my stepdaughter the best room out of all of our kids? My husband, 43 male, and I, 38 female, are moving into our dream house. We have 4 kids. My stepdaughter, Ella, who's 16, our daughter, Jane, who's 11, our son, Sam, who's 9, and our daughter, Luna, who's 6. It's a 6-bedroom home with a master, our bedroom of course, 2 rooms with attached bathrooms, and 3 normal bedrooms. The plan was for one of the rooms with the bathroom attached to be a guest room and the other to be Ella's room. Jane, Sam, and Luna would each get one of the normal rooms. We told the kids to decide their room themes or decor styles so that we could decorate them and move in. Jane was under the impression that she and Ella would be getting the 2 rooms with the bathrooms. We let her know one of those would be the guest room, and since Ella is the oldest, she deserves the other one so she can have the privacy and space that she needs. Jane thinks this is unfair. She tried to convince us to give her the guest bedroom, but we feel that guests should have the comfort of their own bathroom. There's also a bathroom right by Jane's room that will be hers that she can decorate however she wants to, and it can be her own bathroom. It's just not attached. Sam and Luna will share a bathroom. She then brought up that Ella is only here every other week, so the room is just sitting there for days at a time. We said that did not matter, and she still deserves the room because of her age, and when she leaves for school, college, they can switch. Jane has not been handling this well, and a few family members she's spoken to think I'm putting someone else's kid over my own. But I've been raising Ella since she was a baby. Jane has struggled with some jealousy over Ella's 2 birthday parties and some other things she gets double of. Her mom is high conflict, so we all have minimal contact with her and do things separately. I'm torn. Jane and Ella usually get along great, and her jealousy hasn't gotten this bad before. Are we handling this all wrong? Am I the jerk? Edit. To clarify, Jane still has her own bathroom and she can decorate it however she wants to, that no one else will be using, it's just not attached to her room. Her issue is she wants it to be attached to her room. She still has a walk-in closet and lots of space. Her bathroom is right next to her room and nobody else will use it. The 2 younger kids will have to share a bathroom. Ella leaves for college in less than 2 years and will then switch rooms with Jane. She will have her own room with an attached bathroom when she's 13, just in time for her teenage years. We do have guests often, especially in the summer. That's not super rare and hypothetical. Info. We have guests often, including their grandparents who have a hard time getting around sometimes. They come by pretty frequently to hang out with the kids and take care of the younger kids. Edit 2. Jane is also 11. She does not need an en-suite bathroom more than an adult guest. I do not want to raise brats and feel that if she cannot accept a private bathroom that's not attached to her room for 2 years until her sister moves out, maybe she doesn't deserve the en-suite in the first place. But I do agree with some people under here who have stated it's more than the room and I have addressed that with her and put her in therapy to work through her blended family feelings. She loves Ella. They get along great. She just gets jealous sometimes because Ella gets 2 birthdays, 2 celebration dinners if she achieves something, 2 Christmases, etc. We try to do extra things with her to balance it out, but there's still a level of understanding she's going to have that'll come with maturing. That Ella's life is a lot more complicated, and she deals with a lot when it comes to her mother and living split between 2 homes. The double celebrations are one perk to a tough, messy situation for Ella. I'm absolutely mind-boggled by the number of people upset that the oldest kid gets the better room. That's the way my family and every family's home I've ever visited sets things up. Then when the oldest kid leaves, the next oldest gets the room. That's perfectly fair, and it's disgusting the number of people who are saying the 16-year-old doesn't deserve the big room because she's not related to OP by blood. This is a fair system, not the jerk. Well, what do you think? Would you handle the situation the same way OP is or not? Please let us know.
Never give in to the demands of brats. That's how you create Karens.
My entitled mother showed her real self, and now no one loves her anymore. Now, you all know from my last post that my mother tried to act like she's in charge of my life and also acted like my house was hers to give away. Well, that ended very badly for both her and my spoiled sister because I threatened to expose them. And that whole incident inspired me to get cameras for my house inside and outside. My dad was old school. He didn't care for cameras at home. Heck, he didn't even care for TV, save some occasional movie. He mostly enjoyed his scotch with a cigarette and a good book. But now I own this house, and cameras were a very needed upgrade. And just in case, my girlfriend and I didn't tell anybody outside of our close friend circle about them. And those that do know were sworn to secrecy and kept their word. A couple of weeks had gone by without any word from my mother or sister, other than what I was seeing on my sister's social media. She was constantly complaining about having to live in our mother's basement, and I'm pretty sure she was making our mother miserable for it. But what came next surprised me. I got a frantic phone call from my sister saying that her boyfriend was questioning whether or not he was the father of her pregnancy, and he was threatening to leave without a paternity test. My sister swore up and down to me that she's always been faithful to him. I admit, I believed there was a chance she could be lying, because our mother's own past affair made our father question our paternity as well. But I suggested they get the DNA test done. But my sister just babbled about how they don't have a lot of money. I offered to pay for it so long as she didn't come to me asking for money or favors often. She quickly agreed. I arranged for the test and even shelled out extra to make sure we got the results ASAP. But it would still take a few days. I hadn't yet met my sister's boyfriend, but when I did, I started to understand a bit more. He's half Hispanic, and my mother, though not open about it, is not okay with this. It's something she got from my grandparents, sadly. I decided to try and talk to the guy and took him out for a beer, and while at the pub, he spilled his guts to me. He said that my mother had been whispering in his ear about how my sister is just like her, and she had cheated before, so my sister might have as well. This made him have doubts that grew every day, and he said he wasn't sure my sister didn't cheat or get pregnant on purpose to try and baby trap him so she won't have to work any more than she already does with her little part-time online sales job. Sadly, I knew he was probably right about the latter. But other than that, he's described her as a completely different person when she's not around our mother. But ever since they've been living in Mom's basement, she's become more and more like a child. After what I saw at my house, I wholeheartedly believed him. So I asked if he suggested she get therapy. He admitted he's wanted to, but didn't have the money, and had been walking on eggshells around her and our mother for a while, so he never talked about it. Well, I guess that made some brotherly instincts I didn't know I still had kick in, because I started to realize if I was going to have a niece or a nephew, I couldn't let them live with or be raised by my mother. So I did the only thing I could think to do. I told him that if the DNA results came back positive, I'd offer him a job and training at the company I now own. He quickly agreed because he doesn't want to live with my mother any more than he has to. Well, the day of the DNA test results coming in the mail came pretty fast, but my sister called me saying they weren't in the mail she'd gotten that day. I asked who got the mail from the P.O. box, and she answered it was our mother. That pretty much confirmed my theory she was trying to force out my sister's boyfriend. But since I don't, and never really have trusted my mother, with my sister's consent, I preemptively got the clinic to send me a copy of the DNA results to my address as well, and they did come in the mail that same day. I called my mother and asked if she had taken the DNA test results. The following conversation is more or less what I recall since it wasn't recorded. Me: hello, Mom. I heard that Sis's DNA test didn't come in the mail today. Mom:
Oh, yes, but it could be here soon.
Me: did you take it? I know it arrived today as I paid to have it set as priority mail.
What? How dare you accuse me of such a thing? I would never.
Me: okay then, I guess I'll just bring over the backup copy that was sent to me. Mom:
Backup copy?
Me: yeah, I had one sent to me as well the same day since I paid for it. Sis gave her okay and everything. I guess I'll just call her then and we'll meet up. Mom:
Wait, that's not
click. I hung up the phone and called my sister right away. I picked up my sister and her boyfriend from my mother's house and drove to a local diner restaurant. And there we opened the envelope together. Sure enough, the test results were positive. My sister's boyfriend was so happy that he actually asked her if she would marry him, and she said yes, like a half dozen times. The little vindictive part of me was just waiting to see my mother's face when she got the news. But what happened next honestly shocked me. When I took my sister back home, her and boyfriend's stuff was in the process of being put out onto the lawn by a few men we didn't recognize. My sister froze with a look on her face I'd never seen before. Our mother came huffing outside in a rage while holding the DNA test results she claimed never arrived and began verbally losing it on my sister.
How could you make a baby with him? I thought your dating him was just a stupid phase, but now you're gonna have a baby and marry him? I would have been sort of okay with having his little jerk around if you weren't raising it in my home and he wasn't around anymore.
Sister:
But Mommy,
No buts, young lady. I demand you not have that baby or leave my house at once.
Then she turned to me while snapping her fingers and said,
And you. I hope you're proud of yourself. I tried to make this family normal, but you wouldn't do as I say, like a good son should. And now all of my plans are ruined. You're all a bunch of blanks.
Meanwhile, my sister was on her knees in the grass and holding her belly crying. I can't. My mother then actually grabbed her and was poised ready to take a swing at her. But one good glare from me and she froze in place and then rigidly lowered her arm. So she just let out a loud growl and stormed back into her house screaming,
She's your problem now, Craggle. I no longer have any kids.
That night, I put up my sister and her boyfriend in a hotel until a friend of my lawyer that works in real estate helped arrange an apartment for them ASAP. And like I promised, I gave my sister's boyfriend a job. He's new and pretty much starting at the bottom rung, but he's a quick learner. It'll take a while, but I'll get him into a good position, and he's very happy to work for me. My sister is now in therapy, paid for by my company's insurance, and has already started to act more mature than I've ever seen her. She stopped referring to our mother as Mommy and has even started talking about her the way I do. She came to me recently and said she's working harder now and told me I was right about her being a spoiled mooch and she's gonna work hard to be a good mother and a provider for her kid. Her therapist seems to really be doing a great job. As for my mother, well, she actually drove up to my house in broad daylight when no one was home and broke several of my front windows with large rocks she had in a metal bucket. And the rocks had bad words written all over them. But thanks to those cameras I put in, she was caught pretty easily. I had the footage in the police hands that same day. I didn't bother to ask for repayment for the damages she caused. The windows were old anyway, and it just gave me an excuse to remodel. But I did press charges and even got a restraining order. She's not allowed within 500 feet of me or my property. She also took quite the downfall online, as I had a dash cam in my car that picked up everything my mother said and did that evening she kicked my sister out. And this time, I did show it to the rest of the family. And my sister also told pretty much the same story on her Facebook that pretty much destroyed my mother's remaining image to her side of the family. So she's not really speaking much to any of them anymore. My mother didn't lose her job or anything because I didn't go that far. She's not set to retire for another decade or so, but some of her more petty relatives started submitting fake bad reviews for her Airbnb, and now she's probably losing customers. I've heard from one of the few relatives she's still talking to that she's pretty much depressed and looks like a shell of her former self now. Edit. Thank you all for the awards, kind strangers. I thank you from the bottom of my heart, and my sister does as well. My Karen neighbor reported me to the HOA for having a wood-burning fireplace. I, 25 male, own a lakeside property that was legally and officially given to me by my parents. I've been living here for 6 years, and I have some great neighbors along with some not-so-great ones. Out of all my neighbors, I've only ever had problems with one who lives right next door, named Mariette. She first moved in early this summer as she had the former house on her property demolished and rebuilt. My problem started with her over the use of my wood stove in fireplaces. With the temperatures getting colder, I've started to use them daily. My house is not equipped with any form of heating outside of the wood stove and a fireplace. This means that from fall until spring, I will constantly have them going to keep my place warm. My family never outfitted the home with anything better because it was for weekend trips, and we would winterize and leave it when things got cold. My parents thought of adding oil heating when I moved in. However, I was opposed to it because it was a waste of money, and I didn't mind splitting logs. 5 days ago, after having received my shipment of logs for the fall, I was approached by my neighbor Mariette. She came around asking for my parents, to which I said that they don't live here and that I am the homeowner. She didn't believe me and said that I was too young to be a homeowner before leaving. Later that day, I heard a knock at my door and thought it was my girlfriend, so I gave my usual greeting of, "Hey, sweet cheeks," while opening the door. Unfortunately, it was not her, and it was Mariette again, so I apologized quickly and asked what she wanted. Once again, she wanted to speak with my parents, to which, in a more stern tone, I said that I was the homeowner. This time, she finally got it and said that I'm violating HOA policy by using wood-burning fireplaces indoors and outdoors. In response, I said that as new as the house looks, I'm not a member of the group and that the town permits fireplaces and burning yard waste. She then went on to ask why I even needed them because they do nothing but harm the environment. I went on to explain that while the house exterior looks new, the house actually has been around since 1930 and still uses a wood stove and fireplace heating. She didn't believe me yet again and said she would be back with an inspector. Yesterday, once again she came with another person who introduced themselves as the HOA inspector. They tried to talk about my fireplaces, but I shut them down immediately and said that I'm not a member of their group. The guy then tried to lie by saying that the HOA is in control of all the properties in the area. I immediately called him out on the lie and said that he's either lazy or a moron for not knowing that I am not with them. We went back and forth one more time before I told them I will not listen to them and to stuff it and leave. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. If this continues, inform the HOA that if they continue to harass you, you have no issues looking into legal counsel. Also, let your neighbor know that she's not allowed on your property, and if she comes over, she's trespassing. I would tell the HOA the same as the neighbor. They're not to step foot on your property or you will involve the police. In my state, I think it's best to send that in writing by certified mail and keep the proof they received it so there isn't any question when you call the police. Not the jerk. Sounds like she's going to be a real pain. As much as I hate to say it, it's time to lawyer up, or you're going to be harassed by her and the HOA. Have you ever lived somewhere with an HOA? If so, what did you think of them? Please let us know.
I prefer living somewhere with no HOA, but I also prefer living somewhere with no neighbors. People kind of suck.
Am I the jerk for reporting my daughter's car missing after her stepbrother took it without permission? I got my daughter, who's 17, a new car 2 months ago. Her stepbrother, who's 19, has gone crazy about it ever since and has been attempting to drive it, but my daughter made it clear she doesn't want him to. He'd refer to it as our car and would get mad when my daughter decorates it with pink and adds teddy bears and necklaces as decoration. He'd get angry and say that she was ruining their car and embarrassing him in front of his friends, although she never let him get inside of it. I asked my husband to talk to his son, but he said that my daughter and I need to chill. Fast forward to this past Friday. My daughter called me at work saying her stepbrother took her car while she was upstairs after he demanded the keys and she refused. I called his phone, but he didn't respond. I called my husband and I told him what happened. I told him that he needed to go bring the car back or I'd have to call the police. He called his son, then called me back, saying his son was just taking it to go to the movies with his friends and will bring it back at 9 p.m. I couldn't wait. I warned him one more time to bring it back, but he stalled. I called the police and reported it stolen. My stepson was picked up from his location and brought in to the local police station. We got the car back, but it was a mess. The decorations and toys in it were gone. My daughter didn't stop crying about it. My husband blew up at me on the phone for calling the police on his son and causing him to spend the night there. They both came home the next day and a huge argument ensued, with my husband saying I made a mistake reporting the car missing and said that I escalated this situation and that I was the one who created it and I should have gotten his son a similar car, or at least told my daughter to share hers. Otherwise, we wouldn't be dealing with his son's temper tantrums. The house has been full of tension since then, and everyone is just mad at each other. I didn't want police involvement, but seeing my daughter cry, I just couldn't take it. This is weird. For the simple act of reporting the car stolen when it was in fact stolen, not the jerk. For marrying and subjecting yourself, and more importantly your daughter, to the environment created by your husband and stepson, you're the jerk. Get a divorce and get them as far away from your daughter as possible. Not the jerk. You told your husband to get the car back or you'd call the police. He and his son ignored you. You called the police. No one should be surprised. Why doesn't your husband buy his son a car? It sounds like your finances are separated. Does the kid work, go to school, do anything responsible with his life? Man, he's 19. He's a legal adult and he stole from his minor step-sibling. Man needs to man up and figure out this tantrum crap isn't going to blow over so easily. And now he's on the hook for legal consequences because he is, in fact, a legal adult. I can't imagine being 19 and so jealous of a high school junior I stole their car and threw their teddy bears away. Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk for calling the cops on him or not? Please let us know.
Dude sounds like he's got more issues than Nintendo Power.
Neighbor kept parking on my property, so I had him towed. Backstory. I'm a single mother of 2 teenage boys, and I live in a nice, quiet neighborhood at the end of a cul-de-sac. Every house on this street has a garage, and I'm the only one that has a single car and parks in my garage. Almost every house on this street is a family home with at least 3 cars, but most have more. Some will park in their driveway and some will park on the street. It's never been a problem since everyone is considerate on how they park and no one has ever had an issue with getting in and out of the street. In addition, I tend to keep to myself. I'm not antisocial and I wave and say hello to my neighbors when I come and go from my home, but usually when I get home, I stay home. So I say all of this to give you an idea that I'm a homebody and my neighbors pretty much know that when I get home, I stay home. About 6 months ago, the house to my right was sold to a larger family that consisted of dad, mom, and 3 teenagers. The day they started moving in, I made a point to go over to the edge of the property to wave and greet them in order to welcome them to the neighborhood. They were friendly, and I was happy to have such nice people to move in next door. Also note, the dad used their garage for storage and thus parked their 4 cars in the driveway. I didn't know it at the time, but their youngest son was just months away from his 16th birthday. Now that you have a little information, onto the story. The players. We've got me. We've got entitled neighbor dad. We've got the entitled neighbor son. And we've got the entitled neighbor mom. And we've got the poor, nice police officer. Today is Monday afternoon, and this story began last Tuesday. Around 6 p.m. on Tuesday, I received a knock on the door, and it was neighbor dad. Following is our conversation. Neighbor dad.
Good morning, how are you?
Me, talking through the screen door. We're okay. I'm sorry I can't open the door, but my youngest came home from school with a sore throat today, and so I'm not sure what's going on with him. How are you, and how can I help? Neighbor dad.
I'm sorry to hear that. I hope it isn't anything serious. We're okay. My son just turned 16 a few weeks ago, and I'm sure you saw the new truck we bought him.
Me. Yes, I did. It's such a pretty truck and big. Does he like it?
Yes, he does. It's what he wanted, so we got it for him. It is very big. And that's what I wanted to talk to you about.
Let's take a brief pause here and understand that when I say this truck is very big, it is very big. It's an F-350. I personally think it's too much of a vehicle for a kid learning to drive, but it's not my money, so to each their own. Nee, I don't understand. Neighbor dad.
We've been having complaints from some of the other neighbors that his truck is so big that they can't get around it when they are driving through. And we're afraid that it might get sideswiped if he continues to park it in the street.
Me. Yeah, I've had some intense moments trying to get around it myself, but I'm sure he will get better at parking as he gets more experienced. I'm not sure what this has to do with me. I haven't complained.
Oh, I know you haven't complained. which is why I was going to ask if he could use your driveway to park, since you don't use it.
Me, very stunned at this. I do use my driveway when I leave and come home. I can't get to my garage without using my driveway. Besides, I have issues with depth perception, and your son's truck is so big, it will take up most of my driveway, and I don't want to be responsible for any damage that might happen while it's on my property. Neighbor Dad. Well, we will make sure that he parks it in a way that allows you to come and go without any issues. Me. That isn't possible. The only way he can park to allow me to get around him is if he parks halfway on my lawn, and that wouldn't work because then he would damage my lawn. If you're concerned about his truck getting damaged, then why don't you let him park in your driveway, and then one of your other smaller cars can park in the street?
We've already discussed that, and we would have to park 2 cars in the street in order for him to use the driveway. It would be very easy for him to park in your driveway, and I can assure you that it will not be an inconvenience to you. You don't even use your driveway.
Me. I'm sorry, but the answer is no. I'm not going to be responsible for his vehicle on my property, and I need to be able to come and go without worrying about someone else's property. Neighbor Dad, very upset at this point.
You are not being very neighborly. I thought you were a nice neighbor. You don't use your driveway, and this would benefit the whole neighborhood.
Me, losing my temper at this point. Listen, I told you no, and I do use my driveway. Every time I pull into my garage and every time I leave. I'm sorry you don't have enough parking for all of your vehicles. I'm sure it's frustrating, but it's not my problem that you decided to buy a vehicle that didn't fit at your property. Now, while I also find it irritating to try and navigate the road with that truck in the way, it is public parking, and so I deal with it. I will not have anyone else's vehicle parking on my property. Now, if you don't mind, I have a sick kid and need to go get back to him. Have a good day. With that, I closed the door and then looked out the peephole and saw him give me the bird before he turned to leave. I just shook my head and had to take a moment to understand that I actually just had that conversation. I then loaded my son up in the car and left to take him to minor emergency to get him checked out. All tests came back negative, and I was told he probably just had something run of the mill, and to keep him home and do self-care. Was told to bring him in if it got worse, but not to worry. I went to work the next day and told my coworkers the story of my neighbor's request, and they were shocked. I had one coworker suggest that I send an email to my HOA to explain what happened, just to get it on record because it was such an odd request. I took her advice and typed up an email that day when I was at lunch and sent it. For those who want to know, it was just an FYI email, not a complaint email. It basically stated that my neighbor made a request to park on my property, and when I declined, he got mad at me, and I wanted it on record just in case anything ever happens. So very glad I did. So Friday comes and my youngest son has been homesick since Tuesday afternoon. When I got home Friday evening, I checked him and he had begun to run a fever and was complaining of several other things. I had been doing self-care with him since Tuesday and he didn't appear to be getting any better. Around 7 p.m., I decided to take him back to minor emergency and loaded him up into the car. I opened my garage door and I was absolutely shocked to see that very big F-350 sitting in my driveway, blocking me. I can't describe to you how angry I was to see that vehicle sitting there. Now, before anyone starts asking me how I didn't know it was in my driveway, it's because my street is very busy and cars are coming and going all the time. And unless someone knocks on my door, I don't bother watching every vehicle that drives up and down the street. The only window that can see my driveway are the ones in my kitchen, and I keep those curtains drawn and never look out of them. So I get out of my car and stomp over to my neighbor's house and bang on their door. Neighbor Mom answers the door, and this is the conversation. Neighbor Mom, irritated and kind of angry.
Can I help you? You are interrupting our dinner.
Me. Your son is parked in my driveway after I told your husband he couldn't. I need to take my son to minor emergency, and that truck is blocking me in. It's at this time that Neighbor Dad walks up behind Neighbor Mom and proceeds to talk. Neighbor Dad.
He isn't blocking you in. You can get around him.
Me. No, I can't. You need to move that truck or I'm going to call the police and have a tow truck come over. I need to get my son to see a doctor. Neighbor Dad, turning to call for his son and then turning back to me.
He's not blocking you, but I will have him move it.
Nee, it doesn't matter whether you believe he's blocking me or not. He's not allowed to park in my driveway. No one is allowed in my driveway. And if I find an unauthorized vehicle parked in my driveway again,
I'm not going to bother knocking on your door. I'm going to have it towed." It was at this time I saw the son arrive at the door with his keys in his hand, and I turned to leave, and I head to my car to wait for him to move it, and I heard him call me that famous B word. I ignored him and headed to my car to watch as he got in, and after some effort, finally was able to back out of my driveway and parked his truck in the street a little way down the road. I was able to leave and take my son to minor emergency where, as we waited for several hours to be seen, I shot off another email to my HOA about what had just happened. I want to advise, the HOA had already responded the day before that they received my email, made a note of it, and advised my property was my own and I could give or deny access to it as I wish. It was this email string that I responded to while waiting for my kid to be seen. Again, all tests administered to my son came back negative, and I was told it was just something run-of-the-mill and that he would be fine. It just had to run its course. I took him home and called it a day. Saturday evening, my oldest started complaining of a sore throat, and I was starting to feel poorly myself. My youngest appeared to be getting better, so I figured that whatever he had, that we were getting. So we stayed in all day Saturday and Sunday. Sunday evening at about 5:30, my oldest son spiked a fever, and while it came down a little, it didn't come down enough. So I loaded him in the car and off to minor emergency we went. The only one I could find that was open on Sunday at this time was on the other side of town, so I had to drive 20 minutes just to get there, and we ended up waiting for 3 hours to just get in the door, and then another 45 minutes until we saw the doctor. After a few more hours and all of his tests coming back negative, the doctor did state that she could hear some wheezing in his lungs, and so she prescribed an inhaler for him to help him, but basically told me the same thing, that he has something run-of-the-mill and to let it run its course. I had to drive even further to the only 24-hour pharmacy available to pick up the inhaler, and we did not get back to my house until almost midnight. Let me set the scene for you. My son is half asleep in the passenger seat and complaining that he just wants to go home, and I am exhausted and feeling drained and having coughing fits myself, and I'm just looking forward to going to bed when I round the corner and saw that truck sitting in my driveway. I couldn't even pull in because he was blocking me, and I also noticed that he was parked partially on my lawn. I was so mad I could hardly see straight. I Googled and found a 24-hour tow truck service and explained that I had an unauthorized vehicle on my property that I needed towed. The woman said it would be about 30 minutes before they could get a truck there, and I said that was fine. In the meantime, I walked my kid to the house and put him to bed, and then quickly went outside and took a picture from the street to show how much of the driveway he was taking and that he was also parked on my lawn. I couldn't understand why they would park in my driveway again after I had told him no, and the only thing I could come up with is that since there had been no activity at my house for hours, that my neighbors probably assumed I was in for the night and wouldn't notice the truck in my driveway. This is pure speculation, but it's normal for me to be in for the night, especially after 6 p.m. I don't know if they missed me leaving or just saw me leave, but figured I was home. But it really doesn't matter because I told them they couldn't park in my property. It was about 12:30 a.m. when the tow truck arrived, and I half expected my neighbors to come running, but there wasn't any activity from them, and the driver left with the truck without incident. I went in, shot off another email to my HOA along with pictures and an explanation that I had towed the vehicle, and then went to bed. At 6 a.m. this morning, I woke up to someone banging loudly and rapidly on my door. I didn't have to look, I knew who it was. I grabbed my phone, hit the video record button. Before I opened the door, I looked through the peephole and saw a neighbor dad and his son at my door. I opened the door, and the following is the conversation. Neighbor dad, very angry and yelling, "Where is the truck?" Me, as calmly as I could state while coughing. It was towed. You can call such and such company to make arrangements to get it back.
You didn't have the right to tow it. You're going to pay to get it back.
Me, I had every right to tow an unauthorized vehicle on my property. I told you not to park on my property, and you did it anyways. It blocked me from getting in my driveway last night. I told you I was going to have it towed after the last time you parked here without my permission, and I won't be paying anything to get it back. Neighbor dad,
You stole my truck, you jerk, and I'm calling the police. I'm going to sue you.
me, having enough of this. Go ahead. In the meantime, I'm sick, and I'm going back to bed. I closed the door and stood there for a moment. I looked at the peephole, and they were still there. Neighbor dad started banging and was also ringing my doorbell nonstop. He knocked and rang my doorbell for another 4 minutes before he gave up. I'm still recording all of this,
and I didn't turn off the video when he was gone. I turned and saw my kids standing there. The noise had gotten them up, and I just advised that if they were still feeling ill, to just go back to bed because that was where I was going. Now, I will honestly say that I didn't think he would call the police, but he did. It was about a half hour, I really wasn't looking at the clock, that I heard the doorbell ring. I got up and looked through the peephole, and a police officer was there. I opened the door and had the following conversation. Nice police officer. Good morning, ma'am. Sorry to bother you, but we had a report from your neighbor. He's stating that you stole his son's truck by having it towed from the street, and we need to talk to you about this issue. Me. Good morning, officer. My neighbor is only telling you half the story. I had his truck towed this morning from my driveway when I returned home from minor emergency. I couldn't get into my driveway, and I've already told him twice that him and his family can't park on my property. This issue started last week, and I have emails to my HOA, pictures of his truck parked in my driveway this morning, and a video of my neighbor's visit this morning where he called me names and told me he was going to sue me and call the police. I can show you if you'd like. Officer. Yes. So you're saying that the truck in question was on your property without your permission and that you had it towed? Me. Yes. Last Tuesday, he asked if I would allow his son to park in my driveway. I told him no, and he got mad at me and flipped me off before leaving. Then Friday evening, when I was leaving, I discovered his son had parked in my driveway and I couldn't leave my garage. I went over and demanded they remove the vehicle, and I told them at that time that I would have the truck towed if they parked on my property again. I came home late this morning and the truck was in my driveway, so I had it towed. Officer. I just want to confirm. You're saying that it wasn't parked on the street, but in your driveway, and you have proof of this? Yes, sir. If you give me a minute, I will print off the emails that I sent to the HOA that documents the issues, and I will show you the pictures in the video as well. With this, the officer said that he would wait for me to print everything off. Once I got the emails printed, I then returned to the door, opened my Photos app to the officer to show him the truck in my driveway, time-stamped, handed my phone and printed emails to him. After looking at the photo, where you could clearly see my house in the background, the truck blocking the entrance, and that it was partially on the lawn, the officer then read the printouts. He handed my phone back to me and asked me to open the video that I had referenced while he went over the lawn to look. I watched him look at the area and then take a few photos. I could see my neighbor and his whole family standing in their driveway watching me and the officer. Officer returned and I handed him back my phone with the video ready and he watched it. After he finished the video, we had the following exchange. Officer. I'm going to need a copy of that photo and video for my file. If I provided you with an email, would you be able to send it to me? Yes, sir. No problem. I have enough information for my files to determine that the vehicle was not on public property and was in fact on your property. I've made a note that you did not give permission for the vehicle to be parked on your property. Based on the emails you gave me with dates and times, it appears you did in fact advise your neighbor not to park on your property. Would you like to file a trespassing report for this incident? Me. Oh, absolutely. Officer. I can see you're not feeling well. You can either file with me now or you can go online. Getting business card out, writing on it, and then handing it to me. Here's my business card with the email address that you need to use to send me the photo and video, and the case number is on the card as well. Do you want to file with me now? Me. Honestly, I'm exhausted and would prefer to file online later. Officer. Okay. Reference this case number when you email your evidence and file the online report. Also, reference my name in the report. One more thing. I saw in the video where a neighbor's dad stated he was going to sue you for having the truck towed. He can sue you if he wants, and I would advise that you keep all of the evidence you provided me with today, along with the case number I just gave you. Give it a few days, and you can request a copy of the report, and you will want to keep that as well. If you decide to file an online report, you will need to keep a copy of that as well. I'm going to go talk to neighbor dad now, and sorry to have bothered you. Me. Thank you, officer. I'm sorry you had to come out. Have a good day, ma'am. Get some rest. With that, I closed the door and went back to bed. However, I'm so mad that I didn't get any sleep. A few hours ago, I sent off my photo, video, and another copy of the HOA emails to the email address the officer gave me, and then saved all of that information just in case. I also filed a trespassing report online. I then sat down and started typing this story. Not sure where this is going to go, but I am going to see it through. I know that I'm going to get a lot of pushback from people saying that I should have just knocked on their door and had them move the truck, but I feel that I was right to have the truck towed.
I had already told them twice not to park on my property, and it didn't stop, so this was the consequence. I will post an update later if there is anything that comes of my report, or if neighbor's dad does actually follow up on his threat to sue me. If you read all of that, thank you, and again, I'm sorry for the length. Update. OMG, this thing blew up and I'm just amazed. Thank you for the awards. I had posted this because I was second-guessing myself and thought maybe I had let my sickness and anger outweigh my judgment, but your comments have made me feel secure with the decision I made. I have so many comments that I can't respond to everyone, so I wanted to address a few repeating comments that I saw. 1. This is a real story, and if you don't believe it, then that's on you. 2. Yes, I live in a quiet neighborhood and my specific road is busy. There are 12 houses on my street. Busy road doesn't mean noisy. I guess I caused confusion when I said I was at the end of the cul-de-sac. I'm the last house right before the cul-de-sac starts, so I consider myself at the end. Cul-de-sac doesn't mean no traffic. I still have neighbors and guests to drive by. 3. Cameras. I don't have any cameras and I will have to save up to get some, and based on the comments, I will make that a priority. I have to budget to get extra stuff. My neighbor across the street has cameras, and I'm almost certain the front of my house is covered by them. There's no way they can cover the front of their property without getting the street and my front yard covered. This doesn't bother me, and when I'm feeling better, I will go ask them about the coverage. 4. I did take a look at my HOA paperwork, and it does mention that street parking is acceptable, but only if it doesn't impede traffic. I'm assuming that since some of the neighbors made a complaint about the truck, that the HOA must have said something to him, which is why he was trying to use my driveway. This is purely an assumption. 5. For those telling me I should have damaged the truck in some way, I just can't do that. Was it wrong for them to park on my property? Yes, but that doesn't mean I have to be like them. I'm satisfied with just towing the truck and the report I filed. If things don't escalate, then I will call it a win. If they do, then I will certainly respond. Don't misunderstand me, I'm not a pushover. I will not start anything or escalate anything unnecessarily, but if they escalate, I will stand my ground. 6. Yes, myself and my oldest are still sick, but getting better every day. My youngest was able to return to school this morning. Entitled mom tried to have me sent to military school. It blew up in her face. After the last time I stood up to my mother, she seemed to get more wary of how she treated me. So I just continued with my usual routine of school and odd jobs. My 15th birthday was right around the corner, and my dad presented me with an engine kit for my bike to help me get around town in. He said I was better off saving for a car than a scooter, and this would do in the meantime. I ended up agreeing with his logic and kept saving for a car. A few days later though, I found a pamphlet for a military school while sweeping grass off the back patio and mowing the lawn. It was on the ground and under a chair near where my mom liked to sit and drink wine. I had a bad feeling she was cooking up some kind of crazy scheme, so I waited until my dad got home to show him what I had found. He was pretty mad, but didn't jump to conclusions. So he went to see my mom with the pamphlet and asked her about it. Dad, honey, what's this? Mom goes white at the sight of the pamphlet.
It's nothing. I've never seen it before.
Dad, really? Because if you were planning on trying to send Craggle to military school, you know I wouldn't allow it. That's when Mom broke her facade and yelled,
He needs to learn some discipline. He locks his door all the time, and I can't even spank him anymore because he's too big. This is the only way I have left to punish him for being a disobedient brat.
Dad, Craggle did nothing wrong when he stood up to you because of your stupid favoritism. If anything, our daughter is the brat because of you and the way you spoil her and let her get away with stealing from her brother. And as far as I'm concerned, this discussion about sending Craggle to military school is over. And if you try to send him, then so help me, I'll bring the hammer down on you any way I can. Mom.
Well, I guess this whole family is just gonna take away what little power I have left in this house then. If I have nothing, I may as well be nothing.
Dad, you and I both know you'd rather keel over than be nothing. Stop being so dramatic that Craggle is growing up and is his own man now with his own money. Mom then stormed out of the room. The next morning before school, I saw her furiously trying to stuff something into the kitchen trash bin. I waited for her to leave for work and dug out whatever she was trying to hide. It was an application for the military school filled out entirely in her handwriting. It required the signature of both parents or legal guardians on it, and there were 2 signatures on the paper. I recognized Mom's, but the other looked like a pitiful attempt at trying to replicate Dad's. He prided himself on his smooth and complex signature,
and there's no way my mom could copy it without looking like a fraud. I guess she realized that after she was confronted and gave up on trying to send me away. I kept the papers and showed them to my dad later. He was mad, but figured she had done that already and let it go. But he filed the papers in his office just in case. A few more months later, it got out that my mother was having an affair with an old ex-boyfriend of hers from high school. That was the last straw for my dad, and he filed for divorce, and I went to live with him months later after he bought another house. He sped up the divorce pretty quickly by pulling out the military school papers that my mom had forged his signature on. And it wasn't just that. He also had evidence she forged his signature on at least one credit card application. And one other thing that I don't recall. That made Mom fear being arrested for fraud, and they went through court pretty fast because she agreed to most of his terms. Mom got the house because Dad didn't want it, but she also demanded alimony and child support because my sister, unsurprisingly, chose to stay living with her. The judge awarded my mom the child support and a minimum amount of alimony for a decade of monthly payments. The alimony basically just covered my sister's allowance anyway. Mom was pretty mad about that and threatened to take him back to court, but he held those forged signatures over her head for years to make her back down. On the day I left to live in Dad's new house, my sister stuck out her tongue at me and smugly said, Mommy told her that she was a princess and the more deserving sibling, and that's the reason why I was leaving the house. I just shook my head and told her to think what she wants because I didn't care anymore, then walked out the door, finally feeling free as a bird. My relationship with my sister when she came to visit Dad's house once a week only got worse after that, until finally we stopped talking altogether for years, and I didn't really care to visit Mom's house. She pretty much gutted my old room for a home office anyway.
Support our channel by joining as a member today, and we'll give you a shout out in our next video.
Or come watch this video next. You won't believe what Karen does in that one.